Hey everyone, Charlie Morgan here, and welcome to Trial by Fire. Growth is pain, and success is suffering. And on your journey towards success in this program and in life, you are going to suffer. It's really, really going to hurt. You're going to have to go through years and years and maybe even decades of pain to achieve success and grow. Now, not decades to get to the point where you're making six figures, multi-six figures, seven figures. You can get that done in under a decade. But if you're the kind of person that wants to achieve endless growth and is addicted to constantly becoming someone new, which I'm sure you will be in the future, you gotta be expecting some real pain. And I'm not telling you this to discourage you or put you off, as I'm sure you're aware by now throughout this training. I want you to do nothing but encourage you, and I really do have your best interests at heart. But part of that is me being honest with you. You're really going to have to go through some real shit, and it's going to fucking hurt. Like this journey, this little path that you're on, that you're about to partake in, it's going to suck. Now, throughout this mindset training, you're probably at the point now where you're on a bit of a high. Right, you've defined your becoming self, you're becoming more aware, your beliefs are starting to change, you're starting to have some hope and some faith, and that's all good and well. But I need to bring you back down to reality for a second here and tell you that this is not going to be easy. Becoming successful is simple and straightforward if you have the knowledge and a program like this to show you the right path and the right way. But my God, is it painful. This is gonna be the hardest thing you've ever done. And I want to set your expectations that that's going to be the truth, because once this happy-go-lucky, lovely little confident attitude that you've got wears off, because it won't be around forever, because emotions are like a warm bath, they cool off pretty fast. Once all this confidence goes away after a couple of weeks or a month or two, all you're going to be left with is your ability to withstand pure, unfiltered, like just onslaughts of suffering, right? And it's going to happen, and I know it's going to happen because it happened to me and it happened to every successful person, and it will happen to you. So, without further ado, this is Trial by Fire. You might notice on the screen, this is Mark 2. I've made this video before for a previous program, but I wanted to update it and give you guys my cutting edge knowledge and insights on pain. It's quite similar to the one before, but there are some nuances, and you probably haven't seen the one before, so you don't even have to worry about it because this is the updated version. But a lot of people have seen the one before, so you might be curious. So here's what we're going to cover. Universe pushback, the wall of flames, the nature of resistance, resistance genesis, slaying the dragon, pain awareness, defining pain and controlling the body, and then the bank of suffering. So this entire video, however long this thing is, 2-3 hours, is dedicated purely to pain and how to deal with pain and how to suffer well. Because, like I've said a couple of times now, and I will repeat because your expectations need to be clearly set, this is not going to be a pleasant journey. Like you're going to have some fun, and it's going to be a bit of an up and down, and it's going to be interesting story to tell. But my God, are you going to go through it? Okay. So what I need to do in this video is equip you with the tools and the knowledge and the awareness of how pain works, where it comes from, and more importantly, how to just deal with it. Because, we all understand, the David Goggins hustle culture and everything, that pain's pretty important. But a lot of people, they're pussies and they're cowards. And at the first sight of a little bit of pain or suffering, they just, retreat back to their comfort zone. And we cannot afford to let that happen. So without further ado, let's get into the resource. So here we go. So welcome to Trial by Fire. At this point in the training, you've decided what you want, and you've set about becoming the person that you need to become in order to get it. You've raised your consciousness and you've set a new trajectory. And right now you probably feel pretty great. You're probably on cloud 9 thinking, God, this is actually possible. Oh my goodness, this is great. Now, I'm sorry to interject here and burst your bubble, so to speak, but things are about to get pretty ugly for you. The universe is now going to effectively test you, and you're going to have to withstand what I call the trial by fire. So once you set a goal and you set an intent, You're like, I'm going to become this person and stuff. Well, now it's on. Now you've actually got to go and do it. Like you can't just conjure it, theory craft this thing in your head and quote unquote manifest it without doing anything. And so the universe is going to be like, right, mate, okay, you're going to kind of sit down at the negotiation table with the universe or with God or whatever you believe in, and with your future self there. And you're going to have to shake hands with the universe, and it's going to say, all right, mate, let's see what you're made of. You want this sick life and you want this cool thing. What are you willing to give me? And the only bargaining chip that you really have is pain and suffering. Doesn't really work any other way. So the universe will push back, okay? The first thing to understand, and this is why it's so painful to become successful, it's almost like it's just like a law of physics, basically. So Newton's third law of, I think it's thermodynamics, might not be, but anyway, Newton's third law states that every action has an opposite and equal reaction. Okay, we know this, we've used this quite a few times to denote cause and effect. But basically, you've taken the action of conjuring up a new future that is positive and good. And you've created your own version of heaven on earth. I think it's fairly safe to say that, if you had this dream life and this dream reality and you were making the money you wanted to make and you had everything you wanted to, it would feel pretty damn good and you'd be in a pretty good place, heaven on earth, right? But the thing is heaven can't exist without hell. So, the good times, they don't really show themselves without the bad times present, if that makes sense. And what that means is to get to this idea of heaven or heaven on earth, or to get to your goal, you have to go through hell and you have to go through a lot of pain to get there. And everything works in a duality. And the path to success is paved with fire, and you better be ready to walk it every damn day. Because, you basically cast a shadow. Like, your goal, you've created this thing, right? This idea of a goal, this becoming self, you've just pulled this out of your ass, out of thin air, right? This didn't exist. And now you've set this intent and this bias to, mold this little corner of reality that you call your life. Reality is this massive web of existence, and you've taken the little tiny corner that you can control, and you're going to try and change it and manipulate it and reshape it. And in order to do that, you have to create this goal. And when you create something good, you automatically also create something bad, because now you've got something to lose and you've got something to fight for, and you really do cast a shadow when you set a goal. It's kind of like if you let's say that you get into a wonderful relationship. You might be thinking, well, surely if I'm trying to change for the better, things wouldn't suck. But the thing is if you get into a wonderful relationship and you find your dream partner, now it's like you're terrified you're going to lose them, and that comes with lots of stress. And then there's going to be arguments, and you're going to have to navigate and sacrifice, and it's going to things that are good kind of suck to get, right? And then also, if you want an amazing relationship, you've got to work on yourself to get to the point where you can be someone that would be able to give in a good relationship, right? And you need to be that person, and that sucks, and getting that sucks. So basically, modern day clinical psychologists have proven through their many years of wisdom and thinking that life is suffering. This is a pretty common idea in the clinical psychology world, that really your entire life is all about suffering. And you probably have some good times and stuff like that. But really, if you're the kind of person that wants to develop and grow, then you can't really grow without pain. It's just not possible. And, if life is growth, which is to me is kind of what it is, then growth is just suffering. And so the key to heaven is unlocked by visiting hell. Okay. There's a Carl Jung quote on this of how a tall tree has roots that reach down to hell, or something like that. That's not exactly the quote, but the metaphor is the same. If you want to grow and flourish, you better be rooted in something that sucks, basically. So the universe will always resist your efforts to grow. When you try to bend the fabric of reality, so your little corner, as you try and remold it and reshape it, it's pliable. Reality can be bent, and it is malleable, and it is pliable, and you can manipulate it and change it. Imagine reality is this metal bar that you're holding between your hands. It's a little bendy, so you can bend it. But the thing is, when you bend this little metal bar of reality, it will do everything in its power to try and snap back into shape. Like, it doesn't like to be changed. And what happens is when you bend reality, when you apply it, when you mold it, you have to have the strength. First of all, it hurts to bend it because you can imagine your arms and your muscles are like shaking, like trying to bend this thing. But once you've bent it in the shape you want, you have to hold it there for a fair while until it solidifies, until it becomes the new reality. And it requires a lot of strength to hold it there before it solidifies, and it will require every little ounce and morsel of your being and fiber of your moral stature to hold this thing into place. When you push, the universe pushes back. It will fight back. The universe is literally going to fight you. And this is kind of a cool thing because you get to imagine what good would success be, and what good would achieving your goal be, and why would that? We wouldn't, if you didn't have to fight for it, it wouldn't feel good. The reason why everyone wants a six-pack, or everyone wants to be a millionaire, or everyone wants to have this or that, is the only reason that we admire these things and pedestal them and want them so much is because so few people have them. And the reason that so few people have them is because they suck to achieve. And it's kind of a beautiful idea that you have to fight for this thing and you can win. And I'm recording this video to tell you that things are going to suck for you for quite some time. Well, really, they're gonna suck forever, for as long as you're pushing, becoming, and growing. And you're gonna go through pain, you're gonna go through mental suffering. And when I talk about pain, I'm not saying physical unhealthy pain where you have to break your leg or bang your forehead on the wall 100 times or something. We're not going to talk about that sort of pain. We're talking about mental suffering, right? And this video is not to discourage you, it's to essentially prepare you. If you want the gold, it helps to know there is a dragon on the way before you set off, because we have this archetypal story, and we'll actually touch on this later, of George and the dragon, and the dragon defending, you have to go and kill the dragon to get the pot of gold and the princess. And we see this in all sorts of movies, this archetype, like in Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, etc., etc. And these heroes, when they're going to find the Horcrux in Harry Potter or the pot of gold and whatever the hell, or the whatever, a lot of the time they're not aware that there's a dragon, and this dragon sort of comes as a surprise. And this is basically people who watch a couple of Instagram motivational videos and decide they're going to start a business, and they just don't realize that there is this slumbering flying lizard that can just kill you in a bite, right? It's not fun. So understand that once you set your eyes on a goal, the only thing standing between you and the goal is a lot of suffering. So this is a beautifully simple idea. It's inevitable, and there's no other way to get what you want. So we're going to teach you how to suffer well. So just imagine right now that if you are stood where you are now, and imagine your goal is 100 kilometers away, and you're going to walk towards your goal, but the path that you're walking is basically just one big ball of flames. And it's not going to kill you, right? Because you're made of stronger stuff than that, but you're going to burn the whole way there, right? And that's really basically what it is just you're just taking the step by step. And at any point, by the way, Epictetus says this: if you don't like it, you can leave. If you don't like it, the door's always there. And what that basically means is at any point on this journey, if you want to get off, you can just step off, and you can just sidestep off the path and go back to your old life. No one's forcing you to continue walking this path. So you don't have to. If you think, oh God, I can't withstand it, you can get off. But you'd be a pussy if you did that, and you'd be a massive coward. And that's not what this program is about. And I don't think you're going to want to. Okay. But either way, you get the point. So let's get into it. So the wall of flames. So you should now understand that in order to achieve a goal, you simply have to achieve a character, and you become he or she who can. So we know this now, that it's not really, we kind of have it backwards, and we have to invert this goal achievement thing. It's not about achieving a goal, it's about becoming he who could achieve that goal, and developing into someone that could easily get it done, in the same way that a video game would work. And it's very easy to visualize this and draw a nice simple arrow to represent this transformation. So I can demonstrate this on the screen and say, look, I can prove it to you because here's who I was then. And, you know, $1,000 a month, working an apprenticeship with no clients. And then, you know, I became this person who was making $10,000 a month. They look very similar, but two very different people, you know. And then there's obviously a gap between these 2 points, right? You know, the 100 kilometers of fire, whatever I just called it, right? But really, here's what sits in the gap. It's just a big wall of flames. So to go from who I was to who I had to become, I had to pass through a big ass wall of fire and a big horrible walk of pain. Like it really I'm going from this dude over here to this dude over here. It was not pleasant. It was really sucky and it really hurt and I didn't enjoy it, but I knew it was necessary. The funny thing is that if you're not willing to walk this walk and put yourself through voluntary pain to achieve an outcome, then you're going to be in pain anyway. Because this dude, I can tell you, this dude was sat in the fire regardless. So you kind of have to pick your pain. You can either pick the pain of moving forward and going on this path and trying to grow, or you can pick the pain of just staying where you are and staying static, knowing that you could have become something else. And, you know, once again, we're not walking the path here for your goal. We're walking the path for the character and the becoming self. And it's by, like, the pain isn't achieving the goal. The pain is becoming the person that can achieve the goal. And, you know, in the body, we call these growing pains, right? So, you know, if you see like a teenager who's like still growing and going through puberty, like there's a lot of pain associated with that, right? When your joints are growing and stuff. Same thing is true with mental growing pains. Okay, you need to mentally grow, and you'll get to this point and you'll be like, oh, I'm now this person, right? And then to do it again, more fire. So, you know, this isn't just something that happens to go from, you know, 0 to 10K a month or get your first couple of clients. No. This fire exists every single step of the way. And, you know, to go from 100 grand to 10 grand a month to 100 grand a month, and to become the person that is a 10 grand a month entrepreneur, to become the person that is a 100 grand a month entrepreneur, it was sucked again. It was horrible. And, you know, I'm still going through this right now. So I want to go from 8 figures to multi 8 figures. And let me tell you, that's not fun. Like, it sucks. It's so painful. Like, it really, really hurts. You think it's fun to sit down for weeks on end and make, you know, 30 page Google Docs on abstract, complicated, mentally draining ideas that force you to, like, basically give everything you've got, and, you know, building these, like, you know, 40-person teams and managing people and building product. The business sounds fun. Like, oh yeah, I've got this 8-figure business and I've got this brand and I've got these products and I've got these ads, and, you know, we make millions of dollars a year and I'm like really rich. And it's great. It sounds like fun, but try doing it. Like, it really sucks. But I'm here for it, and I'm so familiar with this feeling of pain that, to me, like, the absence of it would be weird. And this is the cool thing about pain and about walking this thing, and actually why it does get a little easier. Well, it doesn't get easier, you just get stronger, right? You know, it's kind of like if you have to, like, lift up a weight, and at the beginning you're really weak. Eventually, if you do it for like years on end, then the weight becomes really easy to lift up, and it's not because the weight got lighter, it's because you got stronger and you're better at bearing it, right? So my pain tolerance is now insane. Like, it's like really high. And that's because I've been doing this over and over again, right? So more fire. And to become someone new, you must face pain. And I'm talking real hard, heavy pain. This isn't just like a little bit of like I've got a bit of an ache in my foot. This is like, you know, going to bed at like 11 p.m. and not being able to sleep for 3 hours because you've got so much doubt and fear about what you can do, and, you know, having to like wake up on like, you know, 4 hours of sleep and do like a full day of like cold calling and meetings and then signing clients and making mistakes, and then clients asking for like a refund at the beginning and then not knowing how to deal with those. It's not fun. And those are just a few trite examples, but there's going to be a lot. And during this transformation, you must learn to live, eat, and breathe pain. And it's all you're going to know for a long, long time. And we have this phrase for growing up, you know, which is growing pains, that I kind of just explained. And I know that this, by the way, I'm well aware that, like, this might feel like a discouraging message, and you might be like thinking like, oh God, this sounds bad. Like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Like, that's not what I'm trying to get at here. I'm just telling you the truth, And I'm just telling you what to expect because, I can sugarcoat this thing. Right now in this program, as you're going through these videos, you're kind of like, that story like the Garden of Eden, where like in the Bible where you've got like Adam and Eve, and like you've got this sort of Garden of Eden where there's no danger and there's no stress, and it's just you're just chilling, eating like whatever you want except from the apple, right? But basically the point of the Garden of Eden, the point of the Garden of Eden is there's no suffering, there's no sin, there's no problem, there's no stress. You're just chilling in this safe place, and you're just living, right? It's like this program, and as you're going through these videos, is kind of like the Garden of Eden. You haven't done anything yet. You haven't taken any action yet. You haven't forced yourself to do things you don't want to do yet. I get that watching 3-hour videos kind of sucks, but if you think this sucks, like I see people in the community being like, how do you watch the videos? They're like 3 hours long and I can't do it, and it's like these videos they hurt to watch. I'm like, brother, if you can't watch a 3-hour video, if you can't sit through a talk, like how the hell are you going to build a business? Way more painful than this. So you get the point, right? Right now you're in this happy little safe place, which is the program, but as soon as I unleash you into the market, you better be ready. So the wall of fire exists, and it is real. You can't fly over it, can't dig under it, can't go around it, you can't pretend it isn't there. It is there, and the only way to get to the other side is through it. So if you want what you want, you got to go through the pain. By going through it and coming out on the other side, you complete the trial by fire that the universe has set for you. And once you come out on the other side, the universe will reward you with what you want, but only if you go through the fire. And I want you to come to terms with this right now. So I want you to actually just take a second, like pause the video if you have to, and just sort of think, like nod your head a bit and say, okay, I know what I'm in for. This is going to suck. And it's going to suck way more than you think, because life has probably not sucked this much for you before. Unless you've been in like the military or something and you've been through like some serious discipline or if you've had like a really hard life, then this might feel like a little easier. For example, I've got a friend that's in the army, and he's so used to like training and like all of these difficult things. Like he's quite high up, and he's a very successful career, and he's like, mate, if all I had to do was what you had to do, then like my life would be easy. So there are harder things to do than this, but either way, I want you to accept the fact that this journey and the transformation will be painful, agonizing, and will hurt to complete. But that is the price of growth and freedom, and you must pay it. So the sole and only reason for your failure will be if you are not willing to face the fire and walk forward every day. And that's really as simple as it gets. Like I can always tell, like if someone fails, or if someone gives up or quits, or they're trying to make excuses for why their business didn't work, all that happened is they stopped facing the pain. They started waking up and they started just hiding away from the pain, and they started trying to extinguish the flames and stepped off the path. That's all failure is. And you won't know, by the way, how long you have to sit in the fire for. And you will also not have any indication as to when it will be over. This is the weird thing about trying to achieve your goals, is it might feel like, let's say you're making nothing, and you don't you want to make 10 grand a month, right? That's your goal. You don't know like how long that's going to take. Everyone has this stupid tendency to say, oh, I'm going to get to 10k a month and I'm going to do it by June, or I'm going to do it by August, and they set this ridiculous 3-4 month window to achieve this 6-figure feat. It can be done in 3 and 4 months. I've seen it done before, especially a lot of clients in Easy Grow. They can get it done a few months from beginning. We've seen that before in our testimonials and stuff. But what happens when you give yourself like this time frame is it's like you try and tell the universe how long it should put you in pain for. And what happens if you think you're going to get to your goal in the next 3 to 4 months, then that's what you think you're going to have to suffer for. And when 3 to 4 months is rolling by and you're still not where you want to be, probably not even halfway there, let alone a quarter or a third of the way there, then you can't deal with it. You can't stand it. There's this quote from James Stockdale, who was a survivor of he was a survivor of a Vietnamese war camp in the 50s. He was a pilot in the Vietnam War for America, and he was captured in a prisoner of war camp in Hanoi, which is the capital of Vietnam. And he was captured with lots of other American soldiers. And what he found is that, with these dozens of other soldiers, hundreds of soldiers in this prisoner of war camp, and you can imagine the conditions, right? They tortured them. They all sorts of horrible things, as you'd expect. Put them in leg locks for days on end, and not nice, terrible, bad conditions. The kind of thing that you'd want to kill yourself to get out of, right? And what James Stockdale noticed is that people who thought that they were getting out and people who thought they were going to be rescued by a certain time were the ones that died. And the quote from James Stockdale is, "The optimists die first." And the reason that he survived and the reason that he, lived and eventually got rescued and, had the human will to not give in and kill himself or, go insane basically, was this idea that, yes, I will be rescued, but I don't know when. And his whole point was that, if you think that you're going to be out by Christmas is going to roll around and you're not going to be out. And if you're not out by Christmas, now your spirit's destroyed. And it's, hope tracked against time is a fool's fallacy, because you don't know when you're going to get out. You could be out by Christmas. You could be at 10K a month in the next 3 months, but it's unlikely. And if you tell yourself that that's where you're going to be by that time, and that time rolls around and you're not there, well, now you lose faith and now you lose hope. And so the optimists die first. And so when with this goal that you've got and with how much you want to make and what you want to achieve, remove the time frame, man. Get rid of it, because you can walk this path, but if you think that you have to walk it only for a couple of months and a couple of months rolls by and you still haven't got what you want, which is very likely, then you're like, shit, I don't know how much longer I'm going to have to walk this thing. And because you were expecting to only have to walk it for this time frame, and you were expecting this much pain, and you've now got to go through double or triple because you're nowhere near where you thought you were going to be, now you're like, shit, I don't know if I can do this. So it's hope and expectation and optimism that kills you. So don't do it, okay? And the interesting thing is you don't know how long it's going to take, and you don't know how long it's going to be over. And you're going to look at people, Easy Grow clients, for example, maybe people even in this program, that get it done in 3 months, 4 months. But you're not them, and everyone starts at a different point. Success and building a business is like, imagine you're up against 10 people in this race, 10 random people in this program. Take those 10 people and, put them up against each other in a 100-meter race. And, who's going to win? Well, some people in the race are going to start at the 50-meter line. Some people are going to start at the 100-meter line. Hell, some people are going to start but after the 100-meter line. You might have to start at the 200-meter line. Some person might start 10 meters away from the beginning. Someone might start 30 meters away from the end. This race, this business thing, this race, not everyone starts at the same point. Maybe some people are going to start with sales experience. Some people are going to start with, the right tendencies and the right traits. Some people are already going to have certain skills. Some people are already going to have niche and market understanding. Everyone has different advantages. And like me, for example, when I started my first agency, I'd done, I had read between the ages of 16 and 18 when I started my first business, I'd read 100 books on business. And during that time, I'd completed a very intensive apprenticeship in sales and digital marketing. And so, what that meant is when I started my first business, I was starting way closer to the finish line than everybody else. And that's why I managed to get to, the 10K a month mark within a couple of months. Because I already knew how to sell, so I didn't have to learn how to sell. I already knew how to cold call and book appointments, so I didn't have to learn any of that. Albeit I did it inconsistently because of my belief systems, as we explored in the last couple of videos. But, I started, at the beginning. And so my point here is with your expectations is you don't know how long it's going to take. And it's not up to you to decide, I'm going to get it done by this point. Because the goals humans love deadlines, but the universe hates deadlines. And so we need to abide by the rules of the universe. And the interesting thing here is you can be 1 meter away from the end. This is the sad thing is you can be so close to the end, but decide not to face it that day and then reset back to the start. And this is the thing, is you cannot afford to step off once. This could be like, for you, getting to your goal could be like a 1, 2, 3 year journey. Maybe not quite 3 years. But if you're starting from scratch and you don't know anything about anything, you've got no experience, it's going to take a couple of years, man. It really is. It's not this, I'm just being honest with you. You're going to be on this journey for, 12, 18, maybe even 24 months. And that's fine, because, to earn 6 figures or whatever you want to earn, like that's a big income, But you've got to realize, man, before I started my first business, I had already been doing the painful, hard shit, reading hundreds of books instead of, playing video games and masturbating like a degenerate. I was actually reading biographies of billionaires and watching YouTube videos on business success. And that's not really work, because that's quite easy to do, right? But I was still making sacrifices, and let me tell you something, that apprenticeship, it sucked. Making cold calls every day for that apprenticeship, and not fun. So you get the point. The fire represents pain. It represents discomfort, anxiety, fear, and doubt. So when I talk about pain, by the way, pain is an emotion. It's like a language that translates into lots of other emotions. So whenever you feel sad about what you're going through, discomfort, anxiety, fear, doubt, any sort of negative emotion that embodies neuroticism, which is just feeling bad, is pain. So you need to come to terms with the fact that you're going to have to undergo this trial by fire. And many people start the journey, but the problem is most people don't finish the journey. As soon as they find out how painful it is, they just quit. And the reason that they quit, and this kind of comes back to the Stockdale paradox, that is the optimist's eye first, the reason they quit is because they didn't expect the pain. They thought it was going to be this easy breezy, do what you love and love yourself and, thing. No, it's not that at all. It's abhorrent sometimes. And because they didn't expect that, they just quit. This is kind of like soldiers in World War I, World War II. You hear these stories of people signing up for the army to go and fight in the trenches, and the whole thing was it'll be over by Christmas and the war won't be long, and it's just going to be me and the boys just protecting some outpost or something, and then they actually got there and they didn't quite realize what the hell they were going to have to go through, right? And you get lots of people committing suicide and deserting and not being able to handle it and just going insane. So, but in spite of what I said, here's the good news. Here is the good news: is this is tough, but you are tougher. Okay, it is very possible and entirely likely, if you accept this and suffer, that you will make it through. In spite of what I've said, it is possible to walk through this, and it is possible to come out on the other side. It just depends how much you want it, and it depends how willing you are to struggle, okay? It sucks, but it's possible. And I know it's possible because I've done it time and time again. And so has any successful person that you know about. And you might be thinking, yeah, but Charlie, you're you and I'm me, and these successful people, I'm not like that. But you're forgetting the point. You've got your little limiting self-image beliefs here of I don't know if I can do it or not, and I haven't got a good pain tolerance. These are all just little bullshit narratives you've told yourself. You can rewire your brain and completely change your belief systems and become someone new to associate with loving this stuff. Because me now, I love the pain. All I want to do is have it. At the beginning, when I was starting, this little version of me here, this dude was a proper, coward. He didn't want to go through pain. He wanted to do everything he could to avoid pain. And I had to work that out of myself. And so I want you to know that, yeah, it's going to hurt, it's going to suck, but it is entirely possible for you to go through it. So how do we pluck up the courage to face the flames and walk the path of pain every day? Well, we need to understand how it works. So, what I'm going to do now is basically walk you through really where pain comes from, and we're going to understand the enemy. And this is kind of like thinking there's a monster under your bed as a kid. You're convinced there's a monster under the bed, and you're like, oh shit, this is a scary thing and it's terrible, and then you're afraid. But if you actually looked under the bed, you'd find that there's not much there, right? Now, I'm not saying that this argument of pain doesn't have substance. It most certainly does. There's definitely going to be pain, but it's not as bad as you might think. It's bad. It's really bad, and it's going to be as bad as you think. But my point here is that you can, like, what I mean by that is it can be more straightforward than you think to walk through this stuff if you understand it. So in pursuit of your goals, you are going to face something called resistance. Okay? Now, resistance physically, is basically if I pick something heavy up, then the weight of that thing and the gravity pushing down on the weight of that thing is going to resist my musculature effort to lift it. So if you go and pick something up right now that's heavy, it's gonna feel heavy, and it's gonna feel like there's some resistance to it. And resistance, it exists physically, and it exists, we can understand it through things like friction, things like gravity, but it also exists mentally. So it's like mental gravity. Resistance is the true enemy, and you must face it every day, every waking hour. Resistance is the source of your pain, and it is the reason that everyone fails. So if you're wondering where does pain come from, well, it comes from resistance. And up until now, you didn't even know resistance existed. You've probably never been familiar with this term before. You just thought that pain just exists, and you never really questioned it. And if we make an effort to understand how resistance functions and how resistance works, then we can defeat it. And I'd know because I've done this every day for the last 8 years. So resistance is an internal sensation that is more powerful than any external force in stopping you from achieving your goal. Because remember, pain is this is mental pain. This is all just in your head. You're creating this yourself. Physical pain where you break your leg or something, that's real pain in your body. That sucks. But mental pain, it's like make-believe. You just make it up, And the reason that you make it up and conjure it up is because of resistance. Resistance is the little voice in your head that says you aren't good enough, strong enough, or motivated enough to start your journey. So, for example, right now you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know if I can do this, and I've got some doubts. That's just resistance. And all of the pain that you're feeling associated with those thoughts come from resistance. Resistance is a faceless, formless, and heartless energy with the sole purpose of ensuring that you never start the work that will lead to your true nature and your goal. And your true nature is, we'll just highlight this. This is your becoming self. Okay. In this picture that you can see here, it's not the rock that's causing this guy pain. It's not the gravity or the incline of the mountain that's causing this guy pain. The thing that's causing this guy pain is the doubt and the fears of the person carrying it. So, all of this, pain, it's just in your head. It's very much real, and it's very much there, and it's very much the thing, and you can't get rid of it. But the reason that there's nothing to be afraid of is because it's in your head. Sure, this guy might be a little bit afraid of the boulder falling and slipping on the mountain or whatever, but all of the pain that he feels of having to push it up, yeah, you've got physical pain in the body, but all of these doubts in his head of shit, can I push this thing for much longer? This sucks. It's all just in the head. And it's important to realize that when facing resistance, it's you that produces it. Inanimate objects and actions do not produce resistance. Now, obviously, physically speaking, yes, they do. So you've got gravity, you've got friction, thermodynamics and stuff. But when it comes to the work and when it comes to just doing this business thing and becoming successful, it's you. You produce this, okay? So let me give you an example with cold email outreach. So people think that cold email and cold calling, and you're going to have to do this, right? You're going to have to make cold approaches. And if you don't think you do, then you're a fucking idiot, because it's really the only way to get clients if you're starting out, unless you've got a brand, because we can't spend money on ads because we haven't got proof of concept yet. So there's no real way around this stuff, right? So people think that cold email and cold calling and cold messaging are painful. But here's the interesting thing about cold email outreach. And you might think right now, like, how can this be painful? Just you wait until you start doing it. Trust me, just wait. With cold email, all you're doing is clicking buttons on a mouse and keyboard on a screen, copying and pasting bits of data and text and pressing send. You've sent an email before. That's all it is. If I asked you to do this for half an hour, you'd feel no resistance at all, maybe a bit of boredom. It's only because the act of clicking our keyboard in this way contributes to our goal and the better future that we feel resistance. So, people don't understand this. Like, people were like, oh, cold email sucks and cold calling sucks. It's like, well, why? You've sent emails before. All you've got to do is just type on your keyboard, click a few buttons, maybe add an attachment and press send. What sucks about that? Well, it's the fact that, doing this contributes towards our goal, and there's a twisted piece of us that just wants to make us suffer to achieve this thing, which is why the goal is worthwhile, that it happens. Or sales calls. So there's a lot of people that hate taking sales calls and they hate doing sales. And to them, sales is really painful. But all you're doing on a sales call is asking a prospect questions and explaining what you do. And by the way, if you're wondering how to take a sales call, don't worry, I've got you. There's a training, very extensive training on how to do this with probably the best script in the world that's closed me, I think, 3,500 clients. So don't worry, that will be there. But all you're doing is this. You do this all the time in the real world. You know how to ask questions and explain yourself. You've done this before. You speak all the time. The act of sales is not what produces the resistance. There is the objective action, and then there is a subjective resistance associated with the action. So my point here is like, let's say that you're explaining something to a stranger. You're on public transport and someone asks you, oh, what does this mean? And you just explain it to them. Now, you're not going to feel you might feel a little uncomfortable talking to a stranger, but you're not going to feel any massive resistance towards doing that. You're not going to feel any doubt or fear or major pain. But for some reason, when you contextualize that against the prospect or someone who wants to buy from you, and you involve yourself and your success in the equation, and when that's on the line, bang, the resistance comes. And if you think about it as well, like cold calling. So like cold calling is notoriously painful, but all you're doing is just dialing a number on a keypad, pressing a green button, talking to someone's voice you're never going to see, and telling that voice what you do. Nothing else. That's it. Objectively, this stuff isn't painful. All the resistance and fear that you feel is a product of you, not a product of the activity of the action. So my point here, from a physical perspective, this is different because, if the action is doing a marathon, then it's understandable why doing a marathon is painful, right? Because, we're exercising our entire body and, our muscles fatigue and, we get lactic acid build up and our body's going to tell us to stop. And the pain you feel from physical action is different because we understand why that happens. If you're doing like a really long run, then what your body's going to do, like if you're doing this run voluntarily, then what the body's going to do is it's going to try and get you to stop running because the body wants to conserve energy, reduce tissue damage, recover and rest so that you don't die, right? That's the physical pain thing's very understandable because the reason physical pain exists is it's just the body signaling like, hey mate, you should probably stop doing this because if you do, you're going to damage more tissue and that can lead to death in extreme circumstances. And the body likes to have a lot of margin before you die. And so we get it from a physical pain perspective. If I said, why is deadlifting painful? Well, that's pretty clear to everyone, right? It's just tissue damage. But mentally, you don't have tissue, right? You don't have like physical tissue that that you can point at that's tangible, that breaks down and has to be resynthesized, that costs a lot of energy to run. So all the resistance and fear you feel when doing these actions that don't require much physical exertion, like cold calling or sales calls or building systems or doing business, all of that pain comes from your psychology. It's such a crazy thing to unwrap and understand because it seems so counterintuitive. Like, why would you put all of this suffering and this fire and this pain in front of yourself when you really want this? And that's because you're a complicated being, and psychology is in the self, and this whole thing is anything but simple. And there's different parts of you and different components of you that want different things, and really you just create it. Okay. And it's very hard to figure out why. And I've been wrestling with this for many, many, many years. And I've got an adequate answer for you later on in this video as to where pain comes from and why we create this psychological suffering in the face of these actions that help us grow and become. And I think I do know why this happens, but God, did that take me a while to figure out. So what you want to do is start seeing the activities that you resist for what they are, not who you are. They'll get real easy real quick, because think about this, for example. Let's say that you are playing a so the game Sims, where you simulate reality with Sims and stuff like that. And in Sims, let's say that there was a cold calling simulator, where you can take a character and you can use your keyboard and mouse or the joysticks on your controller to send this character to work, and you can write a script for them, and you can make them do cold calls. And just imagine there was this sort of business gaming simulator where you could give this person work to do, and they could do sales calls, and you could just press a button and then you get to pick what they say and how they close the deal. And that would be easy. Playing a game like that, the actions themselves are pretty simple and pretty easy to think through and pretty easy to do. And the only reason that the game would be so easy is because it doesn't involve you. It's the character. And so what we need to learn to do, and it's possible to do this, is almost to start seeing, yourself in the third person, and all these activities, just see them for what they are, not who you are, right? And so resistance itself, this idea, we need to be a little clearer with how we define this. Resistance is a force that exists in your mind that basically stops you from doing the work to achieve your goal. So anytime you go to do the work, or anytime you go to do something that you need to do to get what you want, and you don't want to do it for any reason, that's resistance, okay? And really, you'll find that the work will never really exist without resistance. You're never going to want to just do it. That doesn't happen. Maybe a couple of times a week, or maybe a couple of times a month, you'll just be like, yeah, I really want to work today. But most of the time, it gets easier, and the things that you resist tend to get easier as your habits form, and eventually the resistance does go away. So for example, with me now, I go to the gym, and I love going to the gym. I don't feel any resistance towards training and exercising anymore. And so it does go away. But what happens is, the bar has to be raised higher and higher every time. And so how much weight I have to lift now to gain muscle and stimulate growth is greater than at the beginning. And so it still hurts, and there's still resistance there. But there's 7 principles to resistance. Principle 1, the enemy, or there is an enemy working against you. Resistance. It's intelligent, malevolent, and pretty fucking nasty. So it is an enemy, and it's there. And this is principle 1. It's just the fact that the whole thing bloody exists, and the nature of it is that it's there to stop you from being successful. Principle 2, the enemy is relentless. It aims to kill your desired reality and quash all your hopes and dreams. And so, this thing, it always exists, it always has, it always will, and it is a beast. It's hard to beat, it's relentless. Principle 3, the enemy is produced by a fragment of you. It's inside you, and it comes from you. So resistance doesn't come from anywhere else but you, and you produce it. And there's a piece of you, there's a fragment of you, of your shadow, of your identity, of yourself, that produces this, and it produces it in as much as it can. And principle 4 is that you are not necessarily the enemy. It's a force of nature produced by you, but you can't help it. So you don't produce resistance by choice. It's just like resistance is akin to just digesting stuff or having a pulse. It's just a force of nature, right? So in the same way that you have an immune system, and if a foreign body, if a bacteria or some virus gets inside of you and causes you some damage, your immune system's going to be triggered, and you're going to have lots of symptoms, and those symptoms suck, and you're going to feel not very well. It's in the same way that your immune system is triggered by a bacteria or something harmful to your body. resistance is produced in the face of work, and your body can't help but produce it. You can't, this isn't something, it's not, I'm not pointing the finger and saying you're the enemy, although we've kind of already established that you are because everything's your fault. But whenever there is work, there will be resistance. It's two peas in the pod, it's yin and yang, they cannot be separated. It's quantum entanglement, right? At its core, you can't get rid of the one or to have the other. If you want no resistance, then just do no work, but you're still going to feel pain because, well, you're not making progress, right? And principle 5, you must duel yourself. So you are the knight and the dragon. You are the protagonist and the antagonist. War is inevitable and the knight must win. So really, like this whole thing about people think that going into business, they think like it's all about competition, and they're looking at their competitors and they're looking at the people that are in their market. They think, oh, they've got better products than me, and but the real competition is you against you. That's the fight. Your competition has no real say in whether you succeed or not. It's just you. And principle 6, goals come first, resistance comes second. So the second you set a goal and decide upon a trajectory of positive change, you're going to create some resistance and some pain. And there cannot be a shadow without an object in the sun. So how do we get a shadow? Well, we need to put an object in the sun to cast a shadow. And if the sun is the universe and all of the way that works, and the object is the goal, then the shadow cast by the goal that you're going to have to sit in for a while is the work and the resistance. And principle 7 is that resistance can be overcome with pain, love, and assistance. And it's totally beatable. So resistance is it's a decision. You really can defeat it. And you can do it way more than you think. If you really want to succeed and you really want to grow and you really want to become, and you've got enough reason to, this thing can be overcome and it can be defeated. So those are the 7 principles of resistance. And resistance is a living thing that exists in you, almost like a virus. And you're the host of this thing, whether you like it or not. It's like if you host a dinner party and there's someone in the family that you just don't like, that you've got to host, oh God, this person's better. They've got to be there, right? You've got to battle it daily and keep it at bay. And it really is like a constant war and a constant battle. And this is why everything sucks so much. And this is why it hurts to become successful. I don't think there's a single person on this planet who's successful, at least in the eyes of society. We're talking about financial, monetary gain. I don't think there's a single entrepreneur on the planet that has succeeded against the measurements of society that would be able to turn around and tell you that their journey towards success was painless. And I don't think there's a single athlete on the planet. I don't think there's a single professional on the planet that's the best in the world at anything that truly could say that. So how do we become conscious of this force? Because right now, resistance seems like this sort of scary thing. How do we see this force? Is it a force that acts behind the scenes, pulling the strings of reality? Or does it have a form that we can observe and attack? Because in order to defeat an enemy, we kind of need to know where it is so we can actually attack it. Imagine you're in a dark room with a sword and there's a monster in there. Well, if it's pitch black, you don't know where to swing. The monster can just hide anywhere. It can see you, but you can't see it. And fighting an invisible enemy never ends well. So we need to figure out what does this thing actually look like and what forms does it take? And we don't need to look any further than our emotions, thoughts, fears, and desires. So resistance manifests. It's like this. Imagine resistance is like in your brain. You've got this big pool of grey potential, and pouring out of this pool every now and then these little drops that drip down into your unconscious. So imagine this. Right at the bottom of your brain, right at the bottom of your psychology. So okay, here's a brilliant metaphor for you. Maybe it's not that brilliant. You can tell me. Imagine that you're at the bottom of your psychology is a big grey lake. Okay, just picture this for a second. It's a big dark grey lake. Don't know why it's grey, but that's just the colour that comes to mind, right? Because resistance feels grey, right? There's a big grey lake at the bottom of your psychology. And underneath this lake is like a little pocket of pressure, like a little crack. And you know how like you get these volcanic cracks in the ocean that push, hot air up and bubbles up, and basically there's a grey lake, and at the bottom of the lake there's a crack. And through this crack, bubbles, come up. You get these bubbles coming up to the top of the lake. And what happens is the bubbles come up to the top of the lake, and when the bubble hits the surface, you become consciously aware of it. And what bubbles up is emotion and thoughts and fears and desires, And so, there might be a bubble of anxiety one day. And what happens is the bubble sits on the surface and it gets big and big and big and big and big and big, and then it pops. And when it pops, you feel it. And so, what you've got is this constant chasm of bubbles of, emotion just coming up to the surface and popping. And every time they pop, you feel them. And that's kind of what resistance is. And resistance itself is the lake, and this sort of, chasm in the lake that produces these emotions. But the way that it actually registers and the way that we feel it is through emotion. Okay, and so you can't help but feel every single little pop. It could be anxiety, it could be sadness, it could be fear, it could be doubt. It could be this. And there's many forms that resistance will take. So every time you have to sit down to do the work, that chasm, it just opens up. Like this thing just goes real wide and just throws hundreds of bubbles at you, and they're popping, and when they pop, it's really loud and it's really painful, and they register on a horrible level, and they distract you from doing the work, and you realize that if you keep doing the work, there's going to be more bubbles coming up, and this just sucks, right? Bit of a weird metaphor, but I'm hoping you get it. So we cannot see resistance; it's not a physical thing, but we can certainly feel it, and we can certainly understand the forms that it takes. So what forms does resistance take? Well, in my time of battling resistance, I found 30 forms that it morphs into to dictate my behavior and ultimately prevent me from doing the work. And I'm going to explain them all. And there might be more in your life that I've missed, and I've added a few more than 30 as well down the bottom here. But I call this the web of cope. So resistance manifests in many different forms, many different little bubbles that will pop up and stop you from doing the work. And next time you find yourself not doing the work you know that you should be doing, I guarantee you that resistance is present, manipulating you with one of the following things. And when I say not doing the work, I mean not doing what you know you should be doing, regardless of the cope or denial. So cope, by the way, or denial, is basically when you're experiencing something painful, or there's some work you've got to do, or something that sucks that you've got to push through, and you come up with an excuse or a reason to not do it, and you cope with your lack of action, or you're in denial. So let's say that you've got to do cold calls today, but let's say that you've got a bit of a headache, and you say, I'm not going to do cold calls today because I've got a headache. That's denial, that's cope, and that's resistance, right? And so these are the main ways that this can manifest. And there's probably more than this, right? But these are the main ways that I've observed in myself. So self-love, self-loathing, identity, routine, entitlement, fear, judging, burnout, opinions, uncertainty, pain avoidance, instant gratification, doubt, anxiety, rationalization, learning, comfort, research, perfection, waiting, justifying, warped priorities, distraction, support, vulnerability, addiction, criticism, denial, drama, and procrastination. So, these are all excuses, and I'm going to explain every single one individually in a second, and you'll really understand what I mean by these in a second. But basically, whenever you tell yourself, I can't do the work today because insert justification here. This is cope, this is denial. And these are all forms of resistance. Resistance, it takes many forms. In you, there'll be more than others. So, for example, you're going to have what we call primary forms of resistance, where there's, a couple of different forms of resistance that you that you lean on constantly to not do the work. So for example, like, you know, a primary form of resistance that you might have is research. And what this basically means is, you know, you feel like before you actually start doing the painful work of making cold calls and doing sales calls and building your product, you just want to research. And what we find is there's people who get locked in the market research stage for months on end, and that's their resistance. And basically they know they need to be doing cold calls and doing sales calls and doing the sucky stuff, but instead they just bury themselves in the comfortable research mode. And they spend like months, sometimes even years, just understanding the market and watching podcasts and reading books and theorizing, and they just try and stay in the Garden of Eden. And so that could be your primary form of resistance. Or another primary form of resistance could be criticism. And this would be where people don't work and people are afraid to work because they feel they'll be criticized by people for doing it. Or another one could be fear, right? So maybe you're constantly afraid, and so you don't take any action because you're afraid of what happens if you do. So, you know, there's lots of different forms, and I'm going to explain them all in a second. And, you know, then we're going to go through a little exercise where you're going to define your primary forms of resistance. But this is all cope. I call this the web of cope because you can map it out. So how do we defeat resistance? Well, first of all, we know that resistance at this point is a universal force that exists in your mind that you create. And, you know, we know that the way that it manifests is through the thoughts, so the articulated statements that you conjure up in your head, but also through your emotions, you know, the mental things that you feel that prevent you from doing the work. And so the way we defeat resistance is by, one, becoming aware of resistance. So we need to start labeling it. We need to start making it visible and conscious. So we need to know that it's there first, because a lot of people, they don't do the work and they don't know why they don't do the work. They just don't. They're just like, oh, I'm not going to do it today. And then they're like, I don't know why. But when you can start labeling it, you can start to understand why you're not doing it. Once we're aware of it, we need to become intolerant of it and proceed with the work in spite of it and facing the pain. So, like, for example, you know, right now I'm recording this video, right? And I can tell you that program recording and sitting down and recording these, 3-hour long videos is not easy. And there's points during the recording, and I had this literally just a second ago, there's points during the recording where, I get a little tired and I start to sort of, I start thinking, I've been going for an hour or two now, like I could really do with a break. I feel like I'm getting a bit tired. That's resistance, right? That's resistance in real live time. And what I need to do, and I've conditioned myself to do this now, is any time that I'm in the middle of work or any time that I'm about to start work and I feel this resistance, I have to become aware of it and say, oh, that's nothing but resistance. It's, what people don't realize is that it doesn't have any power over it if you know what it is. Because when I say like, oh, I'm getting tired now, or like I need to stop, and sometimes you need to listen to that, and sometimes it's completely sensical to give yourself a break. And the example I gave you a couple of videos ago of going on holiday, and me taking some time off and giving into my impulses every 6 months or 12 months, that's fine. But when it's 8:40 a.m. here, and I've been at work, this morning from 6 a.m. So I'm only in, the zone here for a couple of hours. Like I got a good 10 hours left in me before I'm really tired, right? You know what I mean? So basically when you're going through the work and your brain's going to start like the bubbles are going to start popping up. That lake is sat there and you're going to be, you're sort of swimming through the lake and the bubbles are popping up and they hurt when they pop, right? But yeah, you just need to kind of learn to ignore it. First of all, not ignore it because, you need to know it's there, but, I'm feeling a bit tired. And, what will happen is I'll start justifying it. So, I'm into this recording now, and in real live time right now, I can tell you that there's some resistance to do this recording. I still feel this stuff all the time. It's still very much there. But what I've got to learn to do is just say no, that's resistance and goodbye. And, it's seductive. So it's telling me like, hey, why don't you just pause the recording and Why don't you go and get some food now? Or why don't you just check Slack quickly? Or why don't you just check WhatsApp? And, you deserve a break. All these things. It's all bullshit. All of it's bullshit. So here are the major forms of resistance explained in more detail. And these are in no particular order, but you're going to resonate with some of them. So fear, very common. Not working because you're afraid of what happens if you do. Right? So when you've got to make I don't know, you might not have done this before, but when you've got to make a cold call, or when you've got to make a sales call or something, and you're just terrified. Picking up the phone or opening that Zoom meeting is just real terror. And it's crazy because why? Like I said, the action objectively is very straightforward. All it is just talking, listening, and asking questions. Like a cold call is at first principle, is grabbing a piece of glass, which is your phone, dialing 10 numbers or so, pressing a green button, holding that glass up to your ear, listening to a few rings, hearing a voice, and talking to the voice. That's not hard. But for some reason, there's so much fear associated. I know the reason this is this psychology thing, right? But there's so much fear associated with that. And you've got to realize it's bullshit. It's not real. It's just you creating something so that you don't achieve your goal. It's basically just you sabotaging yourself. Okay? And eventually it will go away. Like in the beginning, I hated cold calling, but now I kind of love it, to be honest. I could do it for a pastime. So instant gratification is another form of resistance. And this is not working or not doing the work because you want or expect instant gratification. So, as you go through this program, you're going to have to do painful things and they're not going to pay off immediately. It's like I said, it can take a year or two for you to become successful. And, part of your brain might be like, oh, I'm not going to bother because, it's going to take too long. Or I'm going to try something. Happens all the time where people are like, oh, I'm going to try something different so I can get there faster. It's like, that's resistance. That's just you. Anything that denotes you not doing the work, any excuse, any justification, any reason, any story, any narrative, any thought that denotes and translates to I'm not doing the work is resistance. Unless you've got a really good excuse like, oh, I'm in a coma, or, my whole family just died in a car crash, then fair enough. It's fine. But a little bit of this, none of that. Doubt. Not working because you have doubts about yourself or that it's even possible. So, like I have this with outreach. I was like, oh, I'm not going to do outreach because there's no point because it doesn't work. Bullshit, not real, not objective, not rational, but it very much feels real. This is the issue with resistance, and the issue with these emotions and these thoughts is we buy them. And by buy them, what I mean is we believe them, because of course we believe them because we're coming up with them, right? So when you start having doubts about like, oh, I don't know, this is going to work or not. And I remember, and I sympathize with you here or I empathize for you because I used to have so much doubt, like to the point where like I'd be going to bed. This was during the first year or two of my entrepreneur journey before I was successful. I would go to bed every night and all that would play in my head is just doubt. Like, is it going to work? I don't think it's going to work. Maybe it's not going to work. Oh God, it's not going to work. And all that was just my brain trying to convince me to not do the work, right? And that happened. And I remember it. Anxiety, not working because it makes you feel nervous, anxious, or uncomfortable. This is a pretty understandable one. Rationalization. So not working because you've rationalized not to do it or to not do it. So, when like you've got something to do, you're like, oh, I've really got to do this hard, sucky thing that I don't want to do, which like cold outreach, for example. And then you're like, oh, well, but it's okay. And I don't have to do it today because yesterday I did this. And, oh, I'm not going to cold call right now because like, they're probably not going to, then the person's not going to be in, or, I'm just going to reschedule this sales call because like, it might be a little bit too early for them and I want to make sure it closes well. So I want to do it in the afternoon. Like just any sort of rationalization is resistance. Learning. This is a big one. Not working because you want to learn more about it first. And it's the same thing with research, which is not working because you want to do some more research first. So, like I told you, this program, I'm going to have to let you loose at some point. You're going to finish this program in the next couple of weeks or month or two, right? Probably, maybe a little sooner or a little later, depending on how much work you put in. But you're going to have to leave. You're going to have to leave the nest, my friend. Like, you can come back to this program anytime you want, and you can come back to these videos anytime you want, and you definitely will have to do that to remind yourself of all the things you've learned, because you're going to forget a lot. That's a fact. But you can't live in this wonderful little painless learning phase forever. Watching these videos isn't that painful for you. Or at least I hope not. I've tried to make them as good as I can. But a lot of people, like, I'm not going to do sales until I've read like all the books I can find on sales. Or I'm not gonna start doing outreach until I really understand my market. Bollocks. Fucking bullshit. Do not buy it. Comfort. Not working because you feel comfortable right now and don't want to feel uncomfortable. Like if you're, let's say you've got to get up at 6 a.m. to do a sales call, and it's winter and you're living in Europe and you haven't got double glazing, so it's fucking cold, and you're sat in bed and you're led in bed and it's all cozy and comfortable, and you've got to get up and get up to do the sales call that's in Australia. True story, by the way. I had to do Australian calls at like 5 a.m. my time when I was building my first business, because I was in the UK. You don't want to get up and it's really uncomfortable. I'm really comfortable. I'll just go back to bed and I'll reschedule and tell them my internet cut out. It's a lie. Perfection. Not working because you want everything to be perfect before starting. So you want everything to be all pretty and perfect before you begin. Waiting. Not working because you'd rather wait to see if things would change. So like, this is a thing where people will do this where they're like, I need to do this painful thing, but before I do it, I'm just going to wait to see if it fixes itself. Stupid. Justifying. Not working because you've justified it in the same way that you'd rationalize it. Warped priority. So this is a big one for everyone. Not working because you think you should be working on something else. So I guarantee this is going to happen to you. Let me tell you something. You are going to have to do cold outreach and sales calls. That's the bit that's going to suck. The thing that you're going to feel the most resistance towards the most in this program and with this business model is cold outreach. Okay? There's no way around it. You're going to have to do it. And you are going to try to work on anything else that isn't that. You're going to clean your room. You're going to get into the gym. You're going to build a website. You're going to make content. You're going to do social stuff. You're going to do market research. You're going to do anything you possibly can. You're going to hire accountants. You're going to create spreadsheets. You're going to do anything you can except cold outreach. Because this is called warped priority. And this is how resistance manifests for a lot of entrepreneurs. Is there's this one thing that you need to do to actually achieve your goal, but you will do anything but that. And so this is why people get stuck, because like they'll spend the first 2 months of their business building a website and then deciding what shade of blue their logo should be instead of actually doing the fucking work. And an entrepreneur's room is immaculate, is a saying, and what that basically means is like you'd rather clean your room and hoover your office and do all your spring cleaning than do cold outreach. So don't fall prey to the warped priority, and anytime you find yourself tempted to do something other than what needs to be done, don't do it. And distraction. So not working because of that thing that keeps distracting you. So, maybe you intentionally, unconsciously leave your phone on your desk with notifications on, and, you've just, I can't do the work because that's this distraction, I can't do the work today because, there's roadworks outside and it's really distracting. So I'm just going to take the day off. I'm not going to do my sales calls because there's someone drilling next door and it's too loud and people are going to hear it. So I just fucking do the sales call. As long as you can hear them and they can hear you, you can just mute when they're talking. Doesn't matter. Support. This is a big one. Not working because you don't have the support or a fucking accountability partner. So people do this where they're like, oh, like, you know, I can't do the work because, like, you know, I can only really work when I've got like someone there with me, or I can only really work when I'm being social, or I could never like work on my own because like I really need a support network. And oh, like, you know, I'm not going to do the work today because like my accountability partner or my coach isn't in. Christ, like, people are weak, man. And this is you know, this is a thing. So don't fall prey to that. And then feeling vulnerable. So not working because it makes you feel vulnerable or psychologically exposed. You know, this is a thing. People don't like to feel vulnerable, and that's that. And addiction. So not working because you're addicted to something other than working. So it's like, oh, you know, I can't work today because my impulse to play Call of Duty is just so strong. Or I can't work today because of this thing is just, I've just got such a compelling urge to do it. And like, I need to, you know, I'm addicted to this thing and I have to get my fix. And if I don't, then I get really stressed and then everything's going to fall apart. So I have to do it and I can't work. Criticism. Not working because you've criticized others that do work, or being critical of others. So maybe you've got competition and you know you should be doing the work, but what you do instead is you open up their YouTube channel and start judging them, or you start criticizing people and instead of doing the work. All because you're afraid of being criticized, right? Denial. Not working because you're in denial, coping, and refusing to see and accept the truth. Drama. Not working because you're drawn to, create, or move to personal drama in your life. Oh, I can't do the work today because Sally just broke up with her boyfriend and I need to be there for her. Well, sorry, but Sally's going to have to wait, right? Now, there are times where, you know, there's going to be things that happen and there's going to be shit that happens in your personal life to people that you really love where you might have to deviate for a while. You know, if someone in the family dies, then fair enough. Take a couple of days off, right? You know, if someone's going through something awful and your friend's really suffering and someone's on the brink of suicide, then that's okay. You know, let's just not do the work for a very short while and it depends how short of a while you want. It depends how much they mean to you, right? God, that's bad. But you know, with the drama thing, like I'm talking about trivial drama, like, I can't possibly do this today because have you heard about what happened to the Kardashians, or there's a new episode of my favorite TV show out, so I've got to watch that before I do the work. Like, have you heard about what's happening with Mr. Beast at the moment and all this controversy or this crypto rug pull? Like, just talking about or engaging in drama and doing that instead of the work is quite common. Procrastination. So not working because you're putting it off till tomorrow. Classic. Self-love. Not working because it makes you feel stupid and a bit of self-hatred. So, you know, like often what people will do if they're new to something is they'll avoid doing it because it makes them feel bad about themselves. And they've got this whole, like a lot of people have this ridiculous notion and paradigm that they need to just love themselves. And, you know, as someone who's been through this training now, I think you pretty well understand my perception of this. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't love yourself, whatever. You can decide if you want to love yourself or not. But I personally don't like it because I think it creates comfort. But it creates resistance because when all you care about is loving yourself and being your authentic self, it basically snookers you because, you know, if you have to do things, new things that you're not, you know, you don't know how to do, that make you feel stupid, that make you feel like insignificant, that make you feel dumb, then you're going to start to hate yourself and be like, oh, I can't do this and I hate myself for this. And then like, because you're so drawn to self-love, you can't do the work. And that happens all the time. The opposite to this though, that you don't want is self-loathing. So when I say you shouldn't love yourself because of this whole identity thing, I'm not saying that you should hate yourself, you know, because that's just as unproductive. You know, but a lot of people, they really do hate themselves. Like, you know, they feel like they don't deserve success. And the narrative that they tell themselves, not a lot of people, a few people, right? It's not that common. But some people will say like, oh, I'm not going to do the work because I just don't deserve to be successful. I'm a piece of shit and I hate myself and so I'm not going to do it. It's still bullshit and it's still cope and it's still denial. Yeah, so you get it. Identity trap. Not working because working would not be me. So let's say that you've got something really important to do, and you've got some work that needs to be done. Or let's say that you've got a sales call. You're on the phone to someone to book a sales call. So you're making cold calls, and you talk to someone, and you talk to this person, and they're like, oh yeah, I can do. The only time I can do next week for a sales call is 4 a.m. on Sunday. And you're like, oh, well, that's not really me. I don't really work Sundays. I don't really do that. That's resistance, right? Your identity can be this shield of bullshit that you use to prevent yourself from doing the work. Or like, if I say you've got to do cold outreach, you could be like, that's not really me. That's not really my thing. Fuck off. What the hell do you mean by that? Cold outreach isn't really my thing. I don't, people are like, oh, I don't approach. I let people come to me. Oh, fuck off. Like, come on. Let's be real for a second here. Like, unless you're the best in the world at what you do, what grants you the ridiculous narcissistic level of entitlement to have that attitude? Oh, it's not, cold outreach isn't my thing. It's not for me. Like, I just let things happen and come to me, and I just deserve, fuck off. Like, I'm sorry. In case you can't tell, that one hits quite close to home, because I see this excuse used all the time. Oh, I don't want to do cold outreach because, like, it's not me. What the hell? Well, then what you are is failure, you idiot. So don't do this one. Okay, otherwise you're going to get in trouble with Uncle Charlie. Routine. This is a big one. Not working because you didn't have your coffee today, or you didn't sleep very well. So what people will do is they'll create this 3-hour long morning routine that they follow that has to be the precursor to their work. And this is obscene. I did this for like a year at the beginning, and it was stupid, where like I would wake up and I'd go to the gym, and I'd come back and I'd take a cold shower, and then I'd meditate for 20 minutes, then I'd read for 20 minutes, and then I'd do some other like good habit shit for like another. It took me like 3 hours to get to work. And all I was doing with that routine was just delaying the time throughout the day to which I had to do my cold calls, or the work that I actually had to do. And so what a lot of people will do is they'll use these biological routine markers to justify not doing the work. So say, for example, you woke up a little bit later than usual. Oh, I can't really do it today because I'm not really in my routine. It's like, oh, I'm not able to do the work today because like I'm really out of my routine, or my sleeping pattern's a bit ruined, or I didn't really eat that well yesterday, or I didn't really sleep that well. And it's just fucking bollocks, man. I haven't got any time for this at all. If you're wondering what my routine is now, it's wake up, work. So I can tell you what I did at 5:45 a.m. this morning when I woke up. I woke up, I got out of bed, I brushed my teeth, I had a cold shower, and I drank a bunch of water, and then I sat down at my desk and I started the work. So from my feet touching the floor to me getting to my desk takes all of 10 minutes. And, that's that. And I came in, finished this document, and then bang, straight into recording, right? So entitlement, not working because you're entitled not to, and that work is beneath you. So you see this with some people, like super rich kids sometimes, who are like, oh, I don't have, like, cold calling is beneath me. It's like, yeah, it's beneath your father or grandfather who built the business that is paying for your life, but you ain't shit, mate. You haven't done anything. You're worth nothing. Just because you come from a, wealthy background, or just because this, that, or the other. This entitlement thing of people being like, oh, I'm above cold outreach, or I'm above sales calls. It's like, what? Like, what? What the hell do you mean by that? Like, I'm above this. Like, let me tell you something. As someone who is a millionaire, multi-millionaire, as someone who's made, $30-40 million by selling stuff online, even I am not above cold calling and sales calls. If I had to do it and, things didn't go well and I had to go back to doing it, I would pick up the phone and start dialing. And that's not me saying, oh, even I, so how can you not be? No. I'm not trying to get like all one-up egotistical on you, but my point here is no one is above the work. No one. And if you have to do it, it's because you have to, and it's because the position that you are in life right now demands it of you. And if you're in a position where painful work is demanded of you, like cold calling or like sales calls or like cold outreach, then that means that that is the level at which you have to operate, and trying to think that you're above that is obscene. And this is the thing, is it's not real. So the whole point of all of these justifications here, all of the copes you can see on the screen are not real. They're just your brain telling you stories and telling you narratives and seducing you into not doing the work. So like, the entitlement might feel real, or this whole thing of like, it's not me might feel real, but all of these things just translate to, I want to avoid pain. Okay? All of these things translate to that. Judging, not working because you're too busy judging people that are, or you're afraid of being judged. Like, oh, I'm not going to make content because I'm worried that my friends from back home will judge me for being on camera. Stupid. Burnout, not working because you think you're too burned out to work. Oh, I'm too tired and I'm burning out and I got to stop. There's a caveat to this, and I'm going to make an entire section on this in a later video on how to deal with burnout and how to rest properly and know when you're burned out and stuff. But most of the time, you're not burned out. Your brain's creating this random excuse. Opinions, not working because someone told you not to, or take a day off. So, you're going to have people in your life that love you and that care for you, and you're going to work hard, and, people are going to tell you like, dude, take a day off, man, or mate, you're working way too hard. And if you're not careful, you can listen to these opinions and these people who, by the way, are way broker than you and know nothing about the way that business works and success works because they're not successful. And then you're going to listen to them, and then you're going to take a day off, and then you're going to end up not working because of these people that are being soft on your behalf. And there's an element where like, I get it. Like, my mother will be like, Charlie, you work way too hard and you need to take time off and you're stressing yourself out. And I'm like, yeah, but this is just a sacrifice, mum. But people don't get it. Like, you and I get it. You and I understand this game, and, you're starting to come to terms with this, the nature of this thing. And anyone that's successful gets it. Anyone that's idiosyncratic by nature and has done something that is separate from everybody else understands this, but yeah, not normal people. Uncertainty, not working because you're not sure how. So ambiguity is a big one. So like, if you don't know like how to tackle something or what to do with something, you won't do it. And pain avoidance, just classic. Now there's a few more. So sickness. So not working because you feel a little unwell. Maybe you've got a cold and you think, oh, I'm just going to take the day off. Location. So not working because you're in a different location. Like, oh, I can't work because I'm traveling. Like this typical travel cope where, you go abroad to do some like laptop lifestyle work, and I'm in a different location, so I can't do the work because there's too many distractions. Setup. So this is one that I get. I've got my work set up in my office where I am right now. I've got my monitor, I've got my laptop, I've got my mouse, I've got everything neatly organized, all my cables and everything. If I don't have my setup, I find it harder to work. But this is just bullshit. I should be able, in theory, to work from anywhere with just my laptop. But if I'm at home seeing my family and I've got some work to do, I'll be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it because I haven't got my setup. It's bollocks, it's bullshit. I always end up overriding it, but it happens. Friends. So like, oh, I can't work today because my friend's in town. I've got to go and see my friend. Tiredness. Oh, I'm a little tired, so I can't do the work. Travel. Oh, I'm traveling, so I can't do the work. Temperature. Oh, it's too hot today, so I can't do the work. Or it's too cold. Oh, we've had a heat wave in the UK, so I need to take the day off because I can't possibly sit in my office because of how hot it is. Dopamine. Oh, I can't do the work because my dopamine system's so fried. I need to do a dopamine fast before I can do the work. Like all this crap. Motivation. Oh, I haven't got the motivation to do the work. I'm not inspired to do the work. Mental health. Oh, I need to take this is a thing. It's called a mental health day, where people take time off work because of their mental health. Now, look, I'm not here to accuse people of making shit up. And I'm sure that people have problems with mental health, and I'm sure that people need time off work. Maybe that helps. But to me, like, the way that you escape poor mental health is through the work. Like, if you're anxious or depressed right now, or you've got some issues with your mental health, to me, in my experience with mental health, and it might be different for you, but for me, And I'm not the be all end all know all, but I can tell you what's worked for me. And that is that, like, I work my way out of depression or anxiety. Because if you had your dream life and had everything that you wanted and more, and you'd unlocked your full potential, would you still be depressed? Probably not. Like, if you were financially secure and you had super strong levels of status and you had respect from everyone and you knew exactly where your place in the world was and you were an expert and you had all the money, and I'm not saying that money fixes mental health, I'm just saying that, like, success does. And, you know, you might just, has it ever occurred to you that you might not be anxious? You might just be playing a competitive game and losing. Because especially in men, anxiety is a emotional response to a perception that you're low down on the social hierarchy of status. And this is true. This is not, I know that people have different perceptions on where anxiety comes from, and I know that sounds awfully reductive. But, you know, is it the question that you're depressed, or is it just a case that you have a shitty life and that's registering as depressing? So to me, like, if you're anxious or depressed, these are just symptoms of either low status or insecurity about your place in the world. And depression is like a symptom of just having a shitty life. And so how do we fix these things? Well, you guessed it, the work. So you shouldn't use them as excuses to not work. Physical pain. Let's say you've got, like, I don't know, some pain in your back. Oh, I need to go and lie down because it hurts too much. I don't want to do the work. Upcoming holiday. So people get this where, like, they've got holiday coming up in a couple days and they're like, oh, all I can think about is the holiday, so I'm not going to do the work, or there's no point in me doing work now because I've got holiday coming up. And last but not least, and I'm gonna put this one in black, mindset. This is a real big one. And I don't want to see anyone using this fucking excuse. So, you know, in this program, we put a big emphasis on mindset, as you're well aware, which is why I've dedicated basically 9 months of my life to making these videos for you, this mindset module. What a lot of people will do is they'll be like, they'll feel this, they'll conjure up this resistance to say, oh, I'm not going to do the work because my mindset's not in the right place. And naturally that happens in programs like this, and this is really the only program like this. So this is going to happen in this program where, you know, we put a massive emphasis on mindset, and what your resistance mechanism will do is it will lean on that. And so you're going to have days where you need to do the work, but you don't want to, and you have resistance. And some of that resistance will conjure up as, I need to go and do the mindset training. My mindset's off, bro. Like, you know, I can't do the work until my mindset's in the right place. The only mindset you need to have is do the fucking work. The entire mindset training boils down to that phrase, do the work. The three word phase that this entire mindset training is about is literally just do the work. So anytime that you use mindset as a shield to protect yourself from the suffering that is the work, just know you're being an idiot. And so, like I said, all of these things here, all of these reasons, they're not real. They're just, well, they are very much real in so much that they feel real, but you've got to realize that they don't have any substance to them beyond the resistance mechanism in your brain trying to get you to not do the work. That's all these things are. They're just a mirage. It does, like, yeah, sure, maybe I'm not trying to deny that your anxiety is real. I'm not trying to deny, like, maybe you're sick and it's true, but maybe it is a little harder to work when you haven't got a setup. But these things, some of these things might make work a little harder, but ultimately you should still be able to push through and do the work. And so all of these things, they are just excuses. They are just reasons that you're just inventing out of thin air. You're pulling them out of your ass, and it's stupid. And it's understandable, and everyone has these. But just know that all of these directly translate to, I'm just avoiding pain, pretty much. And all of these things are what we would call coping mechanisms, or cope, which is just another term for denial. So, like, you know, we have resistance, which is this force, and the way that resistance manifests to us is through these thoughts and emotions and through these excuses, and these are called coping mechanisms. So coping is denial, and denial and coping is a pain avoidance strategy that our brain uses to deal with painful situations. So sometimes if something is too painful, We try and find a way to deal with it and cope with it. And I can tell you from experience that when it comes to work, coping isn't necessary. It's just an easy way out. So an example of when coping might be necessary is this. So if you're going through life and you have something absolutely tragic happen to you, so let's say that, something really traumatic happens, like, your entire family is murdered, right? What the brain will do is, there's a very common and natural psychological defense response to something like that called repression, where basically, think of it like this. If you eat a massive meal, your body will try and force you to stop eating because it can't deal with what you've given it. And so when you get full up and you can't eat anymore, and you lose all motivation to eat, and all your hunger hormones are just screaming at you to stop eating, so you stop eating. The same thing happens kind of with your brain when something traumatic happens, where basically what happens is, when you experience something incredibly traumatic, what the brain will do is it will ultimately repress it, which basically means the brain just presses a big black ignore button. So the brain just represses it and pushes it away, and basically just ignores that the thing happened. And the reason that it does that is so that the brain has emotional capacity to continue to deal with life. Because when something is that heavy and that hard to deal with, if you have to deal with it all in one big chunk here and now, then something as small as someone not opening the door for you could just send you into chaotic frenzy and send you into some psychotic episode. And so there are instances in life and in psychology where coping is a completely normal, healthy strategy, right? If something really bad happens, then you might start coping, and you might start, you might just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen, and that's fine. I'm not going to judge anyone for how they deal with such tragic events, right? But it gets buried, and then you have to deal with it eventually. Otherwise, it starts fucking around with your head and your life, and it comes out in all sorts of weird ways when you're, like 40 or something. But besides the point. So coping with work is not necessary, because work is just an easy way out. Okay? So I can't stress this enough, that resistance exists. It manifests in the form of denial and cope. And, you're going to have patterns where you sort of cycle between maybe like 4 or 5 or 6 of these. It's unlikely you have all of these, but there's going to be a couple that I just read out that you thought, fucking hell, I do that all the time. So what we're going to do now is define your primary forms of resistance. Okay? So every human being faces resistance. Everyone. By just is human nature. Elon Musk, Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, myself. Not that I'm comparing myself to these guys, but you get my point. The difference between them and normal people is that they fight resistance and they win. And to most people, resistance is just this invisible enemy with no label and no name. But it exists, and to beat it, we need to see it. To slay a dragon, we kind of need to know where it is, because we don't want to fight an invisible dragon. So, I've listed these 30 again. You've obviously just seen a few more examples down here as well. You should resonate with some of these, and if you don't, then you're being an idiot. Because you definitely have resistance. Not having resistance is akin to not having a pulse, right? It's just part of your body, it's there, right? Unless you're a robot, which you're not. So what I want you to do now is I want you to make a copy of this document. You can go here to make a copy. And I want you to basically list your primary resistance forms. So, just take a minute. It could be fear, it could be doubt, it could be warped priorities, it could be dopamine, it could be motivation, it could be anxiety. And keep going. Just as many as you can possibly think of, you might have 10, you might have 20, you might have 30. I listed all. Fucking hell. I really thought about this for a good day or two. I wanted to make sure that I gave you all of the ones, and I just thought back to every little instance that I could think of where I didn't want to do the work. And these aren't my main ones. But yeah, I'm not going to tell you my main ones, by the way, because I don't want to bias you into thinking that those are the ones that you have as well. It's important that you discover what is the big ones for you on your own, right? But I can tell you, I have some of these and I have them real bad sometimes. You know, the thing about disciplined people and successful people is we still feel what you feel. We just push through it. So once you've done that, once you've listed your primary forms of resistance below, I want you to add some context to these resistance forms. So like, for example, here are some examples that I could think of, right? So like, let's say, I'm not saying these are my primary ones, right? But I'm just giving you some examples. So here's my primary resistance forms. Let's say that I have burnout, pain avoidance, routine, denial, learning, and comfort. So what you want to do is you want to just, using this page here, just give some context to the things that you've written out. Give some examples. Like, spend a good hour or two on this and just really get to grips with like what your primary resistance forms are, and what and how they come up. And there might be resistance forms you have that aren't even on this list. There might be something that you're aware of, thinking, God, yeah, that's like a big one. Let me see if I can think of another one that might be on this list. Let's see. Well, I think I've exhausted most of the things that are in my peripheral of consciousness, so I think we'll leave it at that. But you get the point, right? So there we go. Okay, so do this now, list them out, and you might be feeling some resistance to doing this, which is the irony. Maybe you've just told yourself right now, like, oh, I'll do this action item later. Well, my friend, let me introduce you to the cope of procrastination. Or maybe, maybe you look at this and think, oh, I don't need to do that. I already know this. Well, my friend, let me introduce you to whatever that would be, like entitlement. Like, I already know this. I don't need to do this. Fucking stupid. Anyway, remember, it's still all your fault. So it becomes very easy to, find these forms of resistance and find these primary forms of resistance and then point the finger and blame those things as to why you're not successful. But the reason you're not successful yet is because you've allowed these things to win. So don't make the mistake of thinking you're not where you want to be because of resistance. As per the previous videos, it's still very much your fault. You are where you are because of you. It's not your fault that resistance exists, but it is your fault if you give in to it. Resistance is a force of nature and will always be present, but we must never blame resistance as the reason we aren't where we want to be. Resistance can always be overcome, and you are always to blame. It's easy to turn and point the finger to resistance and say, that's not why I am where I want to be. Like, I really struggle with procrastination, or my mental health is just so bad and gets in the way. It bollocks, right? It might be bad and it might be a problem, but it's no excuse for you not doing the work. And you can use it as an excuse if you want, but you're never going to be successful. Or my self-doubt is why I'm not successful. But you must remember that these things aren't to blame. It's just the fact that you don't fight back that is the reason. So I'm just telling you the truth. I don't care how bad these things are for you. They are no excuse, right? No excuse. There is no excuse. There really isn't. And once again, all these things, they're not real. They're just direct translations to pain avoidance. Okay? So resistance genesis. So we kind of need to get, like, where the hell does this thing come from? So we know it exists. We know resistance exists, and we know it bubbles up in this grey lake, and all these bubbles pop, and it's painful to feel them, and we'll basically find any excuse we can not to do the work. But why? Like, how's that for a intellectual challenge? Like, why? Where does this come from? Like, what purpose does this serve? Like, it sucks. Why do we have to go through this? Like, where does it come from? Why can't success just be this nice, easy, straight line without suffering, pain, and agony? Well, something worth thinking about is, like, why can't success just be nice and easy? Because if it was just nice and easy, then you probably wouldn't care much for it. The only reason everyone wants to be successful, or the only reason you want to be successful, is because it's a rare commodity. And the reason that it's hard is kind of why you want it, right? Because imagine if everyone had it, then no one would care. If everyone had it, they wouldn't want it because they already have it. We only want things that we don't have and struggle to have. So it comes from your current self. So resistance comes from your current self. Imagine that your current self is an animal, like a living organism. Just like all living things, your current self has what we would call a survival bias. And this means that it wants to survive and it wants to live, not die. So, components of your psychology and components of your identity are very much alive. Not physically, they don't have a pulse, but they do exist. And just like any living thing, it wants to live. It doesn't want to die, right? Understand. This is a very important thing to understand. Your goal threatens the survival of your current self. Because when you set a goal, that goal requires you to become someone new and build your evolved self. And building your evolved self on paper is like putting your new self into a kickboxing to the death match with your current self. So who you are right now, this aggregate of beliefs that's been neatly packed into this term called the self, it's this living, breathing, psychological phenomenon. And it doesn't want to die. And so what does a goal represent? Well, it represents extinction to the current self. Because your current self is smart, and the shadow is this part of your psychology is smart. And it really does understand that if this goal happened, and if this thing came true, then I would cease to exist, right? And so, when you set a goal, your becoming self is sort of, putting up its fists and saying, right, come on then, come and have a go. If you think you're hard enough, let's have a go, is what the becoming self is saying to the current self. And all resistance is it's the current self's response to the becoming self trying to manifest. And so we have this sort of war and this battle start to emerge where the becoming self wants to develop and grow and naturally wants to survive, right? Because the becoming self is just as much of a, living organism in your head as the current self. It's more potential than it is, actually manifested. So these two things, they're about to go to war. And your body, your poor body and your poor mind are sort of the front. So, if you think about two countries, going to war, we have what you would call the front, which is what we had in World War II, where you've got the trenches and you've got the front, right? Which is where the battles happen and where people basically die. So there is a war between these two, what would we call it? These two, heavyweights of your identity. So you've got your becoming self and your current self. And right now they're squaring each other up. They're building strategies and plans to defeat each other. And where are they going to fight? Well, they're going to fight in your body and in your mind. And so, when the current self starts producing stuff to beat the becoming self and vice versa, that's going to register as emotion, it's going to register as pain, it's going to register as suffering, it's going to register as resistance. So it's pretty interesting thing. Like there's a war that's about to happen or already is happening, and it happens in your brain. And you can visualize this as these two, psychological giants just taking swings at each other. And the thing is right now you are kind of both of these things. So you are the becoming self and you also are the current self, which means that when either of them takes a hit, it hurts. So it's like, but you're obviously rooting for the becoming self because the current self has got to go. But this boxing match, this war, is not fought with gloves. It's not fought with guns or mortar or shell. It's fought with resistance and the work. So when we think about a war, we think about weapons and what tools you use to defeat the enemy. Well, your current self fights this war with resistance. The only weapon that your current self has to maintain its survival and stick around is resistance. It's psychological warfare. It will throw kicks of self-doubt, hooks of anxiety, roundhouses of fear, jabs of comfort, alongside a whole different arsenal of psychologically manipulative moves. But your becoming self has only one weapon as well, and that's the work. And the work is defined as the thing you need to do, but don't want to do. These are the only two weapons in this war, right? We don't have mustard gas or nuclear weapons. We have its resistance versus the work. And, you've got your current self here, which is obviously, I'm not trying to demonize you, but you've got the current self here. And understandably so, it doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to, perish and fade away into nothingness at all. Why would it want to do that? It's kind of got a mind of its own. And, what it will do is it will put forward pain and resistance towards any action that denotes its death. This is why you find things so fucking hard. Like, picking up the phone and doing a cold call might seem like an easy thing, but to your current self, as soon as your current self is like, as soon as that registers, like it's like, I should probably make a cold call. Like, what happens is your becoming self gives you the idea of like, right, we need to make cold calls. And then the current self is like, oh, buddy, I know what you're trying to do there, mate. Don't you try and pull the wool over my eyes, because if you start making cold calls, you're going to start getting clients and making money, which is completely out of alignment. That's not me. Like, I'm not a money maker. I'm not rich. I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to be replaced by this new version. So I'm going to give you every ounce of resistance that I possibly can to stop you from doing that. You've got a cold call, Charlie, says the current self. You've got a sales call. Here is 700 million units of fear. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. It will whisper in your ear like, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, you don't really want to do this. This sucks. And this is all resistance is it's just your current self fighting for its life. But then on the flip side, we have the becoming self, represented by the biblical figure. And the becoming self is the part of you that wants to develop and grow. And so the interesting thing about earlier on in this training, in the videos, I talked about how you have a goal and where that comes from. And your goal is basically your becoming self trying to manifest itself. So the becoming self is kind of like this infant. It's like an embryo, right? And the goal is the first line of attack that it has. And this is why most people don't grow in life, is because what will happen is they have this goal and they have this little potential future outcome that they'd like to achieve. But as soon as their current self sees the goal, the current self produces all of these thoughts, these fears, these doubts. They just, that's not me. I could never do that. That's only for talented people. And what happens is, before the becoming self can even be born or slightly grow through this goal, the current self shuts it down. And the current self is very, very, very good at this. And make no mistake, because what's going to happen if you do this properly and you listen to what I tell you in this training, you're going to become the person you need to become to achieve your goal. And that's going to become your new current self. And what's going to happen is you're going to have a new goal and a new becoming self, and the new becoming self that you've just become, your new current self, will do exactly the same thing. So this current self, it doesn't matter if it's you making no money, if it's you making 10 grand a month, 100 grand a month, $1 million a month, $1 billion a month, I don't care. It will always fight for survival, and it never wants to change. And you will always have this relationship with your current self. Like me right now, my current self is $1 million a month Charlie. And there's things that I have to do. My goal is to get to 2 to 3 million, 30 million a year, right? Multi 8 figures. And there's things that I've got to do to get there and ultimately do that. And I don't want to do them. I get loads of resistance. And that's my current self saying, not today, mate. We don't want to do that, do we? Because we want to survive. And the only thing that your becoming self has to fight back and defeat the current self is with the work. And so this battle, these two psychological forces are at loggerheads with each other, just taking these swings. And there'll be the current self like, no, we shouldn't do this, and this is this and this horrible, blah blah blah. Don't do this. Doubt here, rationalization here, priority here, anxiety here, depression here, doubt, fear, all this crap. And then the becoming self is just like swinging through it, like no matter what the current self throws at it, the becoming self must prevail. And more often than not, for most people who don't have this mindset training, the current self wins, because the current self knows you and it knows what the hell's going on, and It knows what to throw at you. And this is why success is so incredibly rare, is because people's current selves are very strong and they don't have the knowledge or information that I'm giving you. So this mindset training, these ideas, like, basically people aren't successful because they don't do the work, right? And there's two reasons. Either they don't know what work to do, right? Which is what obviously this program is for. I'm showing you what to do and what to say and how to act, and I'm giving you the basically the models for behavior that you need to act out to get what you want. So either people don't know what to do, or they don't do it. And the reason that they don't do it, and it's usually the latter, the reason they don't do it is because the current self is fighting them. So now that you've heightened your consciousness, set a goal. This should say goal. Now that you've heightened your consciousness, set a goal and started taking action towards growing into a new version of yourself, your current self is going to kick at, spit at, scream at, shout at, abuse, and seduce you. And it knows you very well, so it will do whatever it can. Like if you have this weird air of entitlement, it will use entitlement. If you have a proclivity towards anxiety, it will use anxiety. It will use whatever it can, and it will use the worst and the most horrible imaginable things to stop you from working. It will do everything in its power to survive. It has no moral code, and it will go to any length necessary to maintain its life, rightfully so. It's understandable, like, if you corner a wild animal and you're going to kill it, then you should expect to get scratched and bit and screamed at. Like, if let's say you want to kill like a honey badger, like those things, you fucking corner a honey badger, you're in deep trouble. Like, in the same way that if you cornered a dog and tried to kill the dog, which you shouldn't do, by the way, because dogs are quite nice, of course, like, you shouldn't hate it for trying to survive. It's just doing what's in its nature, right? If you cornered a dog and it bit you and you were surprised it bit you, then you're an idiot. It will lie to you, manipulate you, make you doubt yourself, panic you, scare you, seduce you, make you feel comfortable. It knows you very well because it is you. And therefore, it knows exactly what obstacles to put up in front of you to trip you up and win you over. And the only way you lose against the current self is when you buy the pain and resistance is actually real. So when you feel one of these methods of resistance, or when you think one of these copes is actually real, that's when you lose. So the second you actually buy it and think, yeah, I am burned out, or, I really need to have my routine in order before I can do the work, or I really can't do the work if I'm not supported properly. As soon as you actually believe any of this bullshit, then you're done. That's when you're cooked. That's when you lose. Remember, all of this is just bullshit. All of this is just direct translation to the current self saying, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Avoid this pain, right? Current self has all of these weapons. All you have, and when I say you, right, I'm referring to you as your becoming self, because the natural side that you're taking, the thing that you're rooting for, is obviously the becoming self. Because the whole point of this thing is for you to become this person, right? And so when we're thinking about taking sides and, winning the war, we want to become the becoming self. But the good news to all of this is that the work wins every time. So the outcome of this battle, of this arm wrestle here, is guaranteed, insofar as that if you do the work, it works and wins every single time. And the current self knows that, which is why it tries to get you to not do it, and why it will pull every string imaginable, every psychological corner of your mind to avoid this. The current self only wins if you give in to resistance and stop doing the work. There's a reason why the current self's entire objective is to stop you from doing the one thing that will kill it. And it knows this. It knows if you do the work, it dies, so it will throw everything at you. For as long as you're doing the work and are winning, you're beating resistance. So as long as you're doing the work, you are winning. So slaying the dragon. So now that you kind of understand this idea of the war, let's talk about slaying the dragon and how this works, because it's the same. Using this archetype makes the whole premise understandable, because everyone knows what it means to slay a dragon, at least from an archetypal standpoint, which means unconscious. So here's a mythological visual. So we've got George and the Dragon, right, where we've got the cave where the dragon lives, and basically what's happened is the dragon has taken a princess prisoner, and it's going to eat the princess. And there's a knight in shining armor on a white horse who has to kill the dragon to rescue the princess. And so the princess represents your goal and what you want to get. right? And what that means is, this is basically what you're trying to achieve. And the dragon represents your current self and its resistance. So it's something you have to defeat something to get what you want. And the knight who's holding the lance is your desired self, and the weapon is the work. So what we have here is the knight using, you can't really see this because it's, me to zoom in a little bit here, but you can see the knight is slaying the dragon in essence, right? And it's trying to stab the dragon. And the way that you kill the dragon is with the work, and so the weapon naturally represents the work, right? So what is the work? And why is it our only chance at slaying the dragon and defeating resistance? Well, I define the work as action. So it's figuring out, it's having to figure out what you need to do and then doing it. In life, there is cause and there is effect, and we must cause to effect. And the work is the cause of the effect you so desire. Your goal is an effect, a snapshot of the future that is born out of the work. And to boil it down, the work is forcing your body to take a physical action in spite of and against the resistance it has felt towards taking it. Okay? So what the work is it's you doing something you don't really want to do. That's all it really is. And to clarify, I don't mean any old work, like building a website or making some business cards or inviting people to like your Facebook page. Those are resistance actions. So your brain, what it will do sometimes, what your current self will do, is it will convince you to do other things that don't move the goal. It will distract you, and because building a website or building like a Facebook page and your social channels and just talking to people about doing the work, it might feel like work, it might feel like it's productive, work, but it's not really. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb with business is if the thing you're working on doesn't cause you a little bit or a lot of dread, then you're not working on the right thing. I really don't think it gets much more honest than that. Like if the thing that you're doing doesn't cause you pain, then you shouldn't be doing it from a business perspective. You know what I'm talking about. The hard thing that you really do not want to think about, let alone do or take action on. When you work, resistance gets weaker. The stronger the resistance, the weaker it gets after you beat it. Eventually, after having taken daily action on your goal for a long time, you will have transcended yourself. And the only path is the work, the only way is the work. You will often find that resistance gets stronger the closer you get to the finish line. So this is really interesting because the closer you get to actually fully becoming and hitting your goal, the stronger the resistance gets. And I demonstrated this to you before in a previous video where I showed you how I made £12,000 1 month and only $500 3 months later. And what this thing is, you're always fighting this current self. There's still remnants of it, clawing at you even after it's died. It's still there a little bit, just trying to come back. And once you're close to the finish line, which is basically I'm now making 10K a month, or I've now got the goal I want, that's when you've got to be extra careful. Because that's when you're most vulnerable. When you've actually achieved the thing for the first month or two, that's when the current self is like, right, now I can get him because he's not expecting me anymore, right? And it gets stronger and stronger the closer you get to the finish line. Your journey through the fire could be 101 miles long, and I can guarantee you that at mile 100, you will face the most insane resistance possible. So, when the current self starts really dying, the more you kill it, the stronger it gets, honestly, is kind of how this goes. The closer you get to defeating it, it finds a new level of energy. It's kind of like if you're fighting a boss in a video game and just before you kill it, it kind of has this rebirth and comes back stronger. And basically your current self will emotionally Hail Mary the shit out of you. So Hail Mary is obviously a move in American football where just as you're about to lose the game and you could win the game if you just hit this one shot, so you just take this wild shot across the pond, right? And that the current self, just as it's on its way out, you can be 30 seconds away from killing it. It will throw the most insane resistance at you. Is this sort of Hail Mary. It will be hell. Your current self will do everything to stay alive. It knows you and it is you. It will use your weaknesses, your proclivities, your impulses, drives, desires, and everything. And it will be hell on earth to fight. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going. So the question is, well, how do we do the work? This is pretty straightforward. You just do it, right? But let's start with a question. What is a knight without a dragon? For there to be a knight, there must be a dragon. And the dragon creates the knight. And what's a hero without a villain? What's a victor without an opponent? Like, if you want to be the knight or if you want to be the hero, well, what the hell would a hero be if there was no villain? If there was no evil to fight, then what would good be? If there was no dragon, then what would a knight be? He'd just be a dude in some armor that looks a bit weird. My point here is that the pain, the issue, is the only reason that you can become. The trial by fire creates he who can withstand it. It's through the pain that you get what you want. The pain is the path. And we have to be grateful for this journey, and we have to be thankful and happy and grateful that we have the option to be in pain, because pain is the only way we can get what we want. So let's say that you want to be a victor and you want to win. Well, the only way you can be a victor and the only way you can win is by having something to defeat. And you should never hate your opponent. You should never hate your competition, because the only way that you can win is if they exist. What's winning without competition? It's nothing. What's good without bad? It's nothing. What's a knight without a dragon? You know, if this dude could just stroll down to the cave and pick the princess up and put her on the back of the horse and ride off into the sunset, he's no knight, he's no hero. There was no tribulation. Anyone can just pop down to the cave, pick her up, and then take her back to the village. Anyone can do that. It's the dragon that creates the knight. The reason the dude is, this awesome figure of heroism, is because he had to defeat something hard. So you shouldn't hate the path, and you shouldn't hate the current self. It's easy to demonize and look at this thing and think, I fucking hate you and fuck off. But honestly, you need the current self to become. The current self is the path to the becoming self. Without your current self, there could be no concept of the becoming self, right? And this is really important. Because if you think about this, how would you know what to become and who you want to become if you didn't know who you already were? So why hate resistance? It hurts and it sucks and it's the enemy, but it helps. Just because it hurts doesn't mean it's bad. You need pain to grow, right? And if you don't have pain, then you don't really have anything. It's necessary. You cannot become without first being. And to be, you must become. You must be to become. So we need a dragon to slay if we want to become a knight. And you cannot become a victor without an opponent. And we need to be someone if we want to become someone. Because your current self is the psychological springboard that you will use to become someone else. So you need to foster gratitude for your current self. You need to love the enemy. It's given you an opportunity. If you didn't have your current self, you'd have nothing to become. Think about this, for example. Let's say that, take Alexander the Great, who's one of the greatest conquerors ever. He conquered the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire had really had Greece under its thumb and Macedonia under its thumb for many, many years. And without the Persian Empire existing and being this big, great enemy to defeat, Alexander would have just been Alexander the Normal. It was only because he had such a great enemy to defeat that he became so great. And the greater the enemy and the more thorny the problem and the bigger the empire that you have to crush and the stronger it is, the greater you become. The greatness of someone is determined by the level of challenge they had to overcome to become great in the first place. And this is why this is so good. If you're in such a bad state right now, that's a good thing, because it means that you've got so much progress to make, and the reward you receive for overcoming it will be infinitely better. Imagine if Alexander the Great only had to conquer one city, and there was one battle, pretty easy army to beat. He'd have got lost throughout history. No one would even know his name. But the best conquerors, your Napoleons, your Caesars, your Genghis Khans, your Alexander the Greats, your Hannibals, these people, they The reason they became so great is because they had such a massive enemy to beat. And so the greater the problem, the greater the reward. And it's my understanding that makes me grateful for my current self. So think of it this way in like a sales call. Like, on sales, you're going to have what we call objections. And an objection in a sales call is when someone says, oh, well, let me think about it. Or I need some time. I don't want to buy right now. Without objections, there is no opportunity to close the call. Most people see objections as the thing stopping them from closing sales calls, but instead they're opportunities to get the deal across the line. So most people, they see their current self as the reason as to why they can't be successful, and they see resistance as the reason as to why they can't be successful. But without the current self and without the resistance, you'd have nothing to fight and you'd have nothing to become. So you need for this thing to exist, and for the work to exist, and for the becoming self to exist, the current self has to exist. These are yin and yang, two peas in a pod. That you cannot have your becoming self if you don't have your current self. You couldn't have this wonderful journey of someone to become if you didn't have this person that you already were. And you wouldn't have the opportunity to do the work and work on things that make you grow if it wasn't painful and there was no resistance. And you might be arguing like, yeah, but if there was no resistance, it would be easier. But that's not possible. So you can't look at it like that. Likewise, you cannot endure pain without resistance being present. Imagine if everyone, take the gym, imagine if everyone was shredded. Imagine if everyone had a six-pack and was just massive and had massive muscles and was in really good shape. Imagine if everyone ran a marathon. If every human being just by default has run a marathon. Well, then running a marathon is no longer impressive. And running a marathon no longer means anything to anyone. If everyone was in really good shape, then we wouldn't have respect for people that are in good shape, and no one would care about being in good shape because it just happens by default. Without the fire, we couldn't even have a trial to put ourselves through. Without our current self, we wouldn't have a becoming self to become. So be grateful for the fire. Learn to love the pain and the resistance and its source, because without it, you couldn't become. And without darkness, there is no light. And without sadness, there is no happiness. And this is good news, because the more down you are now, so your life might suck right now, right? And you might be in a lot of pain. But let me tell you, the more pain you're in right now, and the more that this thing sucks right now, the better it will be when you succeed and overcome it. And there's a lot of reassurance and glory in that. And that's that. So now we can move on to pain awareness and getting a little bit more concrete with some action items here. So it's going to seem a little bit weird, but I want you to bear with me. I've got 2 action items for you right now, and you're not going to want to do either of them, but you're going to have to, because I'm about to prove my point. So first action item is this. What I want you to do is go and find something that you can hold in one of your hands or both of your hands that weighs between 1.5 and 3 kilograms. So, kilograms, 3 to 6 pounds roughly if you're American. Bag of sugar, water bottle, a few books, anything. So I've got on my desk here, I'm going to do this with you. On my desk, I've got this big speaker. You can hear it, I'm knocking on it. So go and get a big item. So pause the video, just something that weighs a couple of kilograms, couple of pounds, go and get it, okay? Okay, so you should now have this item in front of you. This is not a lot to ask. Now, provided it's safe for you to do so you don't have any injuries or anything, in a second here, and don't do it right now, don't do it yet, but what I want you to do is hold out this item in front of you with one of your hands, or both of your hands if it's quite heavy, and I want you to hold it out in front of you with a fully stretched arm, but not yet. And as you do this, I want you to watch your brain and become very aware of your thoughts for the next minute or two. And so you'll notice, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this out now, and this is quite a heavy speaker, so it's going to start to hurt, and this is a funny image for you because I've literally just got my Bang & Olufsen. This isn't light, to be fair, but I'm holding this out, right? And you'll notice in the first minute or two, you'll be fine. Now I'm not, because this speaker's bloody heavy, but as soon as the burn sets in your arms and shoulders, just notice how your brain responds. And what you want to do is watch how your brain starts creating all these stories and ideas to escape the pain. So now, without injuring yourself or anything, I want you to pause the video here and hold it out. It doesn't have to be for long, just long enough to experience a bit of pain. So I've been holding out this speaker now for, 30 seconds, and my arm's starting to burn and I'm starting to shake a little bit. And if I'm paying attention to my thoughts, my brain's starting to tell me like, hey mate, put it down. Like, we need to stop doing this. And what's happening now is my body is sending signals through my nervous system from my muscle tissue in my shoulders and my arms to my brain through my CNS and through my central nervous system to say, hey mate, we should probably put this thing down because it's starting to hurt. And now my shoulder's starting to burn, and you'll feel this direct feedback. And the feedback from a physical standpoint might not be from your brain, so you might not have like thoughts necessarily saying put it down, but you'll have this sensation in your arm. So I'm gonna put this down before I hurt my shoulders. That's bloody heavy. But you just become aware of it. Like, you're familiar with pain, you feel it all the time. So hold this thing out, and you'll just feel the sensation in your arms, right? And that's just pain. You've just experienced pain. And for as long as you hold that thing out whilst you're experiencing pain, then you're basically going through resistance, and you're pushing through resistance, okay? So go and do that now if you haven't already done it. I know it's going to feel a bit weird, but just notice it. Just notice the pain. Notice where you feel it. Notice how you feel about it, and pay attention to the impulse to put the thing down. And you only have to hold it out for a minute or two, just long enough to feel it, right? So go and do that. Now, the next action item is make a cold call. Now, look at your brain. Look at what happens. Observe yourself right now. You just came up with 101 excuses as to why you shouldn't do this right now. What I want you to do is call someone in your niche. You can find the number online and call them and tell them you want to sell them something, and then explain your service to them. Now, if you can't find the number in your niche, or your niche isn't cold callable, just pick a random local business niche and call them up saying you want to sell them a marketing service. And I want you to go and do this right now. And what you're going to notice is your brain is reacting, saying, what? Like, I don't know what to say, or I'll do it later, or I don't need to do that, I understand how this works, or there's no point in me making a cold call because I can't cold call in my niche. You've got a bunch of stories, thoughts, narratives, and resistances that are coming now, lots of them. So you need to ignore them. You want to become aware of the resistance and do it anyway. Pick up the phone and dial. And I'm going to go and get my phone and do this with you right now. So we're in this together. Okay, so I've got my phone now, and I'm going to go on Google, and I'm just going to pick a random niche. Let's say we use estate agents. So estate agent, and I'm just going to go for estate agent in London. Okay. And see, even as I'm doing this now, I'm starting to notice resistance in my body. It might not be as severe as the stuff that you're noticing because I've done cold calls for years now, right? But let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a completely random estate agent, and you're going to hear this, right? And I'm just going to tell them that I've got something to sell them.
Please listen carefully to the following options. Please note all calls are recorded for training and monitoring purposes. For sales, press 1. For lettings.
Okay, let's see what they say.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm here to try and sell some marketing services. I'm just wondering who I should talk to about that.
Let me just check. Hold on a sec.
No worries, thank you. Okay, so now I'm on hold.
Agents love what they do and pride themselves on having a unique perspective on the entire process of matching people with homes. From the little things we see that others miss, to the neighbourhoods we know like the back of our hands. Because we're...
Hiya. I think one of the directors would probably be your best bet, but none of them are in the office today.
Okay, could you let me know when should I call back?
Yeah, they've gone out on a jolly, I think.
Okay, no problem.
You could try Monday. What was it in relation to? Sorry, marketing?
Yeah, marketing, Facebook ads and such. But that's fine. I'll call back on Monday.
Okay. All right, no worries.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that's all it is. That was pretty simple, right? You heard what I said. I'm not even trying to book an appointment or close a deal. I don't even work with real estate agents. I just needed to face some rejection or some resistance. And I need you to do that right now. And you're going to have all sorts of justifications and reasons as to why you shouldn't. If your niche isn't cold callable, if you don't have a product to sell, none of it matters. Like, cold calling is a really painful thing to do, and you're not going to want to do it, which is exactly why you should. So you just heard me do it, and that's all you have to do is just call up a business and say, I just want to sell you some marketing services, or, whatever your service might be. Okay. So go and do it right now and don't put it off. And as you're doing it, I want you to notice your brain and notice the resistance and how much cope you come up with to avoid doing the painful thing. Okay. So now that you've done that, and you should have just done it, pause the video and do it. But now that you have done that, what you've just done is slightly defeat your current self. And now you're going to have to do it tens of thousands of more times, right? But that little interaction there, where you felt resistance and pushed on through in spite of it, is what we call the work. The work is when you push through the resistance, when you do something you don't want to do for the greater good of becoming who you need to become. That's the interaction. And it's as simple and as easy as that. If you can just do this every waking day, every waking moment during your working hours for the next few years, you will become a millionaire. And I know that's true because I did it myself. At first principle, that's all it's about. And so now that we've done that, and you should have done it, and if you haven't done both these things, please do them now, because, dude, if you can't hold out an item and just make a quick phone call right now, then, and you the point I'm trying to make is, if you can't do this now at the height of your awareness of how this stuff works, when this is so fresh in your mind and the reason you should do it is so fresh in your mind, then you're not going to do anything down the line to succeed. And I can't force you to do it, but if you don't, then you're done for. So let's define pain. So what actually is pain? Well, it's an emotion, and it exists in two forms. We have physical pain, and you just experienced this a second ago when you held that item up. And we have mental pain, and you just experienced this a second ago when you made that cold call. Physical pain is a sensory experience that indicates damage to bodily tissue. And mental pain is an emotional experience that indicates damage to our identity, self, or ego. So you can think of yourself like psychological tissue, where, if you're holding out an item and your shoulder starts to burn, then that's because your tissue is being damaged. But mental pain it protects the ego, or the self. Pain is protective. It's there to defend us and stop us from hurting ourselves. It's a signal that your body or your mind sends saying, don't do this if you could do this. If you do this, we could die. And the body doesn't want to die, and the self and the ego and the identity do not want to die, at least metaphysically speaking. And it comes back to this idea that the current self is this living, breathing thing that wants to live and wants to, continue on and propagate through your self and your psychology. And it kind of doesn't want to die in the same way that you don't want to die. Entrepreneurship and business success is far more about mental pain. So that's obviously what we're focusing on here. When I talk about seeking pain and how pain is good, I'm only really referring to the pain that is productive in helping us become more. I'm not talking about physical pain that would come from breaking a bone, or the mental pain that would come from the death of a loved one. On this journey, we're not seeking to cause ourselves unnecessary physical or mental harm, just the right kind of harm, productive harm that helps us grow and develop. And pain manifests instantaneously when effort meets resistance. So the way we experience pain and the way that we conjure up pain is by meeting resistance with effort, or meeting resistance with the work. But effort is another word that I'm using to denote the work, right? So there's this trifecta. You have this thing you need to do, you have resistance to not want to do it, and then you do it through effort and through the work. And the combination, the result of combining effort and resistance is pain. And so we experience pain when we meet effort with resistance, or when we meet resistance with effort. And the sensation of pain occurs when your body or mind puts effort into facing or overcoming resistance. And knowing how to navigate this is the key to success. So you can see this guy here, right? He looks like he's in some pain, pretty obviously. And that's because, he's got resistance. He's breaking down muscle. It looks like he's doing a sit-up, right? So, the muscle tissue in his stomach is obviously being destroyed and broken down so it can be rebuilt under this resistance, right? And it's literally in bodybuilding, this is called resistance training to a T. And he's facing it. He's meeting that resistance with effort, and clearly he's in some pain. And you just did the same thing when you made this cold call as well. There was the resistance to not do it, but you did it anyway. And it was painful and it probably hurt you and you probably didn't enjoy it much, but you did it. Well done. So let's talk about pain, shall we? Because, it's a pretty important thing to discuss. You kind of have got a pretty good understanding of it now, but there's a few things to understand. So, evolving pain. Well, really, we could call this becoming pain, really, because it is becoming pain. So just like your body sends signals of pain to the brain to prevent further tissue damage, the current sense of self you have signals pain to the body to prevent damage to itself. And this is called becoming pain. So when you feel pain and when you're suffering mentally because of the work, what's happening is you are literally becoming someone new. This productive mental pain that we're talking about is a direct symptom in real live time that you are growing and becoming. And so if you want to know how to know if you're becoming and what the signal is for your evolution, it's pain and it's suffering. And so for as long as you're experiencing pain, you are in a state of growth. And we understand this quite well in the gym because right now you have, let's say running, for example, right? You probably have a baseline for how long you could run before you experience significant pain. So maybe you could run for like 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers before it started really hurting. In order for you to extend the length over which you can run and sustain, in order for you to become someone that can run for longer, you have to run for longer. And as you do that, and as you run longer, you get into more pain. The more pain you experience, the more you're growing. It's as simple as that. When you start doing something that would grow you, facing resistance, you feel discomfort and strong mental pain, and sometimes even physical, but usually it's just mental. And it's the direct, instantaneous feedback signal that you are becoming someone new. And you want to look the snake in the eyes. So lock eyes. You look the monster dead in the eyes. So what I mean by this is face this thing head on. Like full courage, full bravery. You're going to have this resistance, just attack it. Don't waver in your sight. Face the pain. If you're afraid, don't look away. If there's a dark corner of your mind you don't want to visit, go there. Do not live in denial. Do not delude yourself. You cannot get away with anything. Denial and cope is where you just bury your head in the sand and hope the problem goes away. It's where you retreat behind your phone or your laptop and watch content for hours and just ignore the problem. This is how the best athletes are trained. Like Michael Jordan, for example, the way that they trained Michael Jordan's mind and his pain tolerance was by forcing him to sit in isometric holds. An isometric hold is like a plank or a wall sit where you hold a static position where your muscles are under stress. And they would force him to hold those positions throughout his training for as long as he could bear. And what that does is it basically conditions your brain to sit in pain and to really, look at the monster in the eyes and just face that thing, right? And it's absolutely excruciating. It's pure agony. But they sit in the pain because this trains them to be relentless. It trains them to condition themselves so that when the pain is present, it's time to perform and they don't waver or falter. So when you're used to being in pain, it means that you can put yourself there more voluntarily, more often, but also when something happens that's painful, you're prepared and you can deal with it. And you need to treat pain the same way. You've got to become this pain-seeking missile. You want as much of this as you can get because remember, pain is a symbol that you're becoming and you're literally, evolving into this becoming self. And what this means is that the more pain you experience, the faster you become what you want and the faster you get what you want. And so if you want to achieve your goal and bridge this gap between who you are now and who you need to become to achieve your goal as fast as possible, you just need to put yourself in as much pain. And the more intense the pain and the more pain you're in will basically accelerate the rate at which you achieve. And it's impossible for this to not be the case. And this is why you could achieve let's say that the average length of time that it takes to achieve success to 10k a month of this program is a year, right? Let's say it's a year. It might be longer, might be shorter, right? But let's say it was a year. Well, if you figured out how to, the average person will go through like a year of pain, like an average year of pain. If you figured out how to go through that amount of pain in half the time, then you would be half as successful. You would be as successful, but in half the time, right? And so, pain, the intensity of the pain compresses the time frame over which you achieve what you want. And the more pain you're in, the faster you get there. So fucking face it. Get up every day and lock eyes with the monster. Lock eyes and don't unlock them. You want to seek pain everywhere. Pain avoidance in other areas of your life will manifest in your business. Pain conditioning is a universal neurological rule. If your workouts are half-assed and lazy, this will seep into your work. So you also want to seek to find pain everywhere in your life. So not just in your business and in your journey to success, but everywhere. If you've got like a gnarly, hard conversation to have with someone in a relationship, then just have it. Have out at it. Don't avoid it. You want to look for pain everywhere. If you decide to lay in instead of facing the day every now and then this will seep into your work. So you need to look the snake in the eyes and, just any opportunity. Dude, I love it. Like any chance I can find, like I'm like this bloody pain-seeking missile. Like I just look for it everywhere. Like for example, the other day I bought this massage gun because I had this like tension, this tightness in like my hip, and like that thing hurts. Like when you've got like some tension in like a muscle group and you get this massage gun at like 3,000 revs per minute and just jam it in there, like that thing hurts. But I fucking love it. I love pain. Like it's my favorite thing ever because I know that when I'm in pain, I'm becoming this new beast. I'm unlocking this new version of myself, and at least I'm recovering, right? So familiarity and loving pain. The cool part, after a while, you'll start to enjoy the suffering and the pain. You'll begin to take comfort in discomfort, and you'll be able to derive meaning and pleasure from pain. It's possible, and this shift only happens when you open your mind to the idea that all this suffering and pain and agony is productive and helpful. Without pain and suffering, you cannot become. It is the ingredient. Pain is growth. It's a synonym for evolution. If you want to grow, develop, and evolve, the only path you can take is pain. And you like and love what is familiar to you. If you ever wondered why you love someone so much, well, it's because they've just served you a lot of impressions, which is a marketing term for how often you see someone. The way that your brain works is, what you like is basically what's familiar to you. And so let's say that you've been watching me on YouTube for a year, chances are you probably like me. And the only reason you like me is because you've become familiar with me. And pain is a feeling, and the more you experience it, the more familiar you become with it, and then you love it. And this is called Stockholm Syndrome. And in psychology, there's this thing called Stockholm Syndrome where people who get kidnapped, if the only social contact they have and human contact they have is with their kidnapper for months or years on end, then what happens is they fall in love with their kidnapper. And this is literally, you might think that that's impossible, but you can Google it. It's called Stockholm Syndrome. It's a thing. And what happens is sometimes, it's not always the case, but sometimes what happens is people who get kidnapped, they get rescued by the police or whatever, and then the person wants to go back to the kidnapper because they've become so familiar with them. And they've become so familiar with this thing. This happens as well with PTSD and soldiers that come back from war, is they become so familiar with trauma and stuff that they kind of want to be back out there. And they get this weird like relationship with being at war, even though it sucks and it's horrible. And so your brain is wired this way. At a base level, the only mechanism that the brain uses to determine how much you like something is how often it's exposed to it. If you love pasta, it's because it serves you a lot of tasty impressions. And the same is true for emotions. A lot of depressed, anxious, and worried people stay that way because their brain becomes familiar with these emotions and they kind of like it, which is fucked. But, that's how it goes sometimes. The person may dislike the feelings and emotions from these states, but since it's what their neurochemistry is familiar with, they always default back to it. Take someone who's stressed. They don't want to be, but because they're familiar with it, they always default back. So this is why if you can learn to put yourself in pain all the time, eventually it gets really easy because you just want to be in pain. Like me now, if I'm not in pain, if I'm not experiencing some sort of discomfort in my work life or in my physical life or whatever, then I feel really unhappy. And I've got to a point where, like, for me, being uncomfortable is comfortable and being in pain is pleasure. And I don't mean that in like some weird sexually masochistic sense. I'm talking about like, if I'm not doing something tough, like I'm miserable. And that's because I've done things that are tough for so long in business. And now it's just my default thing. Like I wake up and I don't even think about it. I'm just like, I can't wait to put myself back in this state again. You know, you can take advantage of this. If you're always in evolving pain, you will eventually settle into a familiarity with it and you'll fall in love with it. This is the best advantage I have. I absolutely cherish the evolving pain and the becoming pain. I love the suffering. You know, I find great meaning and joy in overcoming it. I've had to overcome these, overcome it to put these slides together, to put this document together, in the last 20 minutes. Like, even recording this video right now, like recording videos like this kind of sucks. Like, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of focus, it takes a lot of willpower. It's only 10 a.m. and I've got a whole, 10 more hours, 12 more hours of work ahead of me today. I've got a big one today. And, I'm in some pain right now. I'm experiencing it, but I love it. You can tell through my voice, like I love talking about this stuff as well. I can derive pleasure and happiness from the pain because I've done it so often. And this is basically Stockholm Syndrome, and I've already explained what this is, which is where you fall in love with your kidnapper. And you can brainwash yourself to love pain. It just takes a few years of doing it every day. And just know that it's possible, and trust me, if you expose yourself to a certain state long enough, you'll always default back to it. So this happens with like people who go to the gym a lot. So if you've never been in the gym before, then at the beginning, like the first year or first few months of going to the gym, you're going to hate it. You're going to feel judged, you're going to feel weak, you're going to feel insecure. But once you've been doing that thing consistently for like a year, it becomes part of your life and you can't not go. Like, not going makes you miserable, and not finding that resistance and that pain and that sort of burn, like it becomes incredibly addictive, and all you want to do is just do it, right? And so the same thing is true with work. And if you don't go to the gym, just go to the gym and talk to anyone that's been going for like a couple of years and ask them how they feel about the gym, and they'll be like, oh my God, I fucking love it so much. And then you're like, well, why do you love it if it hurts so much? They're like, I don't know, I just do. And that's just familiarity. And pain is a compass. So if you don't know what to do or what to work on, you don't really need to do much more than ask our friend pain. If your work is pain-free, then you're working on the wrong thing, or you're just not doing it with enough intensity. If there is no pain, there is no growth, and it is that simple. If you ever find yourself working on something that feels easy, pain-free, and comfortable, then you're going to be in for some trouble down the road. Whatever you feel the strongest levels of resistance and pain on is exactly what you should be working on. And this is the easiest way to figure out what you need to do and what actually constitutes the work. Remember, if you're doing something in your work life and it feels easy, then you're doing the wrong thing. The reason that pain is a compass is because your current self will muster up the most pain for the activity that has the biggest potential to kill it. So remember that the reason what we do is we use pain as sort of almost to suffocate the current self. And that's really what it is you do the work, you put yourself in pain, and it's kind of like you're removing the oxygen that the current self would use to survive. And because of this, the thing that hurts the most and the action and the activity that you conjure up the most resistance towards, the current self knows that if you do that thing, it's the most likely to kill it, right? And so whatever is most painful is most obviously what you should do. And it will wrap the most important activities in a huge shroud of resistance and then burn you like hell when you try and do them. And notice this and recognize that the most painful activities are the ones that are the most important to getting what you want. And this is why everyone struggles with cold outreach. This is why everyone has such a hard time getting clients, because getting clients is the single most important thing to them developing their becoming self, because getting clients denotes making money, and the current self just fades to exist when you actually have like a proper business, right? You go from being this civilian nobody to actually being this like semi-successful entrepreneur who's like making his own money or her own money. And that's a cool transformation to make. But the reason that everyone has such a hard time with client acquisition is because like it's the one thing that if they get right kills the current self off. Having a website or building a great service isn't the thing that matters. It's actually starting to make the money and exchange with clients that's when you start to become, right? So this is why everyone has so much emotional baggage when it comes to cold email, cold calling, cold DM. And we address this in Easy Grow, and Easy Grow fixes this to a T. And I'm gonna help you fix it. But obviously, my intentions with Easy Grow and everything, and I've talked about it a lot. But we get around that pretty easily over there. And if you're ever stuck on what to work on, just look no further than whatever it is you're resisting most and deep down you know you need to do but have faced a lot of resistance towards. So if you're just procrastinating this one thing, or if every time you try and do this one thing you get distracted, or you've got all these reasons as to why you shouldn't do this one thing, then do it. Like for me, like it's program recording. Like, you know, like it's fucking obvious. Like I've got to sit down and make these Google Docs and record them. And, you know, it really, if you think about it from a simple action perspective, all I'm doing is just thinking and typing and reading off of a screen and talking about my experiences. That shouldn't be hard, right? But, you know, in order for me to get to the next level and multi-8 figures, I have to, you know, grow the market, add more value, and help you become successful. So you go on to buy Easy Grow, my mastermind, in you know, in the future. And you know, part of me getting to that multi-8 figure mark is you know, building insane value in this product. And my current self knows that, and so it's, you know, you might think that I find it easy to make these videos. Trust me, like it's not. You know, it's not easy. It really isn't. And if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth anything. It wouldn't be worth doing. And conditioning. Work on becoming more aware of your resistance patterns and pain avoidance loops. The single most important thing I did when I started Imperium was that every time I felt the urge to stop sending messages or emails, I'd open up my phone and send more. Every time I felt a negative emotion towards appointment booking, I'd go and send more messages. If I was worried about opening my inbox to find no replies, I'd open my inbox and send more emails. Every time you notice resistance, fight back with the work. So we'll talk more about this in just a second here with something called action stacking. But one of the best things you can do, and one of the most productive things you can do to become this person, is every time you feel a little shred of resistance, immediately meet it with the work. So like, you know, we talked about this war, right? And how there's this battle between your current self and becoming self. And whenever this version of you, this current self, conjures up a little bit of resistance, you need to run forward and meet it immediately. Because if you don't meet it immediately, what happens is the resistance and the pain, like this resistance, it starts to fester and it starts to grow. You know, and it's kind of like, you know, it's like a weed in a garden. Like if the second you notice a weed, you need to weed it out straight away. Because if you leave it, it's going to start to spread, and then you've got hell to pay when you try and get rid of them all. Okay? And that's called conditioning. And I'm really good at this, where, you know, if I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that, then bang, I'm like, as soon as that resistance is there, before it has any chance to gain weight, I'm on it. Because resistance is like pushing a snowball down a hill, right? Like if you've got a snowy hill and a snowball, like it compounds and it starts to gain momentum. If you can stop the snowball before it starts to roll, or just as it starts to roll, then you get to catch it in its smallest form when it's lightest, and you can destroy it, and it's easy. But if you wait until it's rolled all the way down the hill, if you wait hours or days or weeks or months to deal with this thing, chopping that thing down is significantly harder. Controlling the body. So, practically speaking, the way that the soldier, so to speak, that your current self will use to like basically stop you from doing the work is the body, right? So your physical stature. Your body is your physical and mental state. So remember what I said, how like the front, or like the battlefield between your current self and becoming self is the body? Well, your body is basically your physical and mental state. It would be the combination, or is the combination, of all of your emotions, all your resistances, all of your neural pathways, you know, etc., right? So start to see your body or your mind as a puppet and yourself as the puppeteer. So this is a pretty cool idea, where, you know how like in like shows and stuff, or like puppet shows, you have a puppet and you have the puppet master. And there's a relationship, right? So you have the body and you have the mind. And the mind is in control of the body. Or in a video game, you have the character and you have the player, where the player is in control of the character. Or you have the soldier and you have the general, where the general is in control of the soldier. Or you have the puppet and you have the puppeteer, or the puppet master, where the puppeteer is in control of the puppet. The problem is that most people, so most players, right, so the mind, the general, the puppeteer, the person that should be in control is actually a slave to the latter. So the character, the body, the soldier, the puppet, these things here, they run the show for most people. If the character wants something, then the player gives it. If the character doesn't want to work, the player turns a blind eye. If the body wants to binge watch Netflix for a day or impulse eat some burgers, then the mind complies. If the character feels nervous, the player lets it off. If your character or your body or your soul, whatever term you want to use here, if your character runs the show, then you're doomed to fail. Really successful people basically do not let their body run them. They do not let the character or the body run them. Like, it would be like letting your body determine your behavior. So giving into your impulses and, giving into all of these stupid things and not facing resistance, that would be like the general taking orders from the soldier. Or it would be like the puppet gaining a mind of its own and controlling the hand of the puppeteer. Like, that would be ridiculous, right? If the general just started taking orders from the soldier. But most people in life is they forget that they are the general, and they forget that they are the puppeteer, and they forget that their body is basically just this slave that they can command to do what they want. Okay? You need to pull the strings. You need to move the joysticks, and you need to send your soldier into battle. Their mind sets the action, and the body complies. If this is what successful people do, right? If the mind is running the show, you'll win. If the mind wants the body to work out, the body should go to the gym. If the mind demands a 12-hour workday, then the body gets it done. So primary example today, I've got like a 12, 14-hour workday ahead of me, as I do most days. And, my body's like, even though I've been doing this for years, my body's still like, can we just watch something, or can we just chill out, or, maybe we should go and, I literally had this thought a second ago whilst I was recording this, of I need to go and wash my car. I'm not even joking. 5 minutes ago, I was like, I need to go and wash my car today. And that's the body, that's the soldier trying to give orders to the general. That's the body trying to give orders to the mind. It's I get this when I wake up in the morning. Every single day, I'll wake up at 5 or 6, and I just want to lay in bed and just go back to sleep and just lay in this little comfortable, mode, and go and get my laptop and just sit and start watching YouTube and, just go back to sleep, or, go this thing is relentless, and your body just wants to do all these things, but you have to learn to say no, and you have to learn to run the show, and you have to learn to give orders, right? What, I don't need to go and wash my car today. What the hell's that all about? So the body will make all these requests, and the character, the soldier, the puppet will start making these requests and trying to put its foot down and stamp its foot and say, no, we're not doing this today. But you need to treat it in the same way that a parent would treat a child and say no, we're doing this, right? And when you try to take the reins and discipline the body or the character or the puppet or the soldier, it will kick and scream. And this is when you need to use something called action stacking. So, for example, in my life, like I said, I'll get up and I'll wake up early, and there goes the alarm or whatever, and I'm like, I don't want to get up, but then I get up, and as soon as my body starts kicking up a fuss, and as soon as my character's like, oh no, we don't want to do this, I'm up, right? Feet on the floor, I'm up. And then the last thing that my body wants to do, and the last thing my character wants to do, is take a cold shower. So the first thing I do is I walk over and I just turn the cold water on, and then I'll be stood there in the shower, and the cold water's running, and my body's just like, oh no, and then no, in, and then I'm like, in we go, forcing. And then I'm out of the shower, I brush my teeth, and then the last thing my body wants to do is enter the chamber of pain that is my office, the portal to hell. That's what your office should be, by the way, portal to hell. The last thing my body wants to do is sit down and record a 3-hour video, on all this stuff, and and do all these meetings and make all this content, and it doesn't want to do it, right? But I force myself. I'm like, I could just go. But bear in mind, at this point, I haven't checked my phone, I haven't messaged anyone, I haven't scrolled anything. My body is like, because I keep my phone upstairs when I sleep, so that because my apartment is the living room's upstairs, right? So the lounge is upstairs, so I don't have to go upstairs until I eat food in the afternoon, because the kitchen's up there as well. So what I do is I put my phone up in the lounge, which means that I can get out of bed and walk to my office and be on the same floor without going up the stairs, which means I don't go on my phone in the morning. So I haven't been on my phone today, right? I haven't checked anything. I haven't checked Slack. I haven't checked email. I haven't done anything pleasurable at all. And so, I walk over to my desk, and the last thing my body wants to do is open up this Google Doc and these slides and start this recording. And, I'm just keeping this thing in check the entire day. Just, like even with all sorts of things, like, I'll get to the time when I'm about to eat like lunch or something in the afternoon and be like, I could really do with like a pizza right now or some shit like that. And I'm like, no, not happening, And like I said, there are times when you can give the body a break and you should let the character run a bit wild, Any parent understands this with a child. Like, you can't just discipline your child all the time because then they fucking hate you. But like, for example, I had that holiday and I went to, Spain and Marbella, and, I ate junk food and I lounged around and I watched loads of shows, and I was really lazy and didn't do anything. And, it was all great and fun and stuff, lots of pleasure, lots of dopamine. So there's a time and a place to give the character the thing that it needs, but that should only be like once or twice a year, really. Not at 10:35 a.m. in the morning, and when you've got shit to do, in the middle of a work block. Like, no. So this is where, like, the easiest way to take the reins, and there's two things you can do here to take the reins. And when I say taking the reins, I basically mean letting the body and the character and the soldier or the puppet, letting it know who's boss. So, in order to control the body and force it into battle and to send it to do things that it needs to do to get what you want, there's two things you can do. The first one is called action stacking. And this is a sick idea. I love this idea, and I do this all the time. So action stacking. So action stacking is where you double, triple, quadruple, or 10x down on what you ask the body to do if it kicks up a fuss. So if you tell your body to do 10 cold calls and it panics and starts freaking out, then force it to do 30. If it throws resistance for you at 30, you force it to do 100. And this is really effective because you basically can beat the body and the character into submission here, because what it starts to learn is that if it kicks up a fuss, or if it generates resistance, you force it to do double. So for example, like if I'm running, I'm going to give you an example in a second. This is how I ran. I've run some pretty long distances, and what I used to do when I used to run, because I used to do lots of cross country long distance running when I was younger, is I would set myself a goal, like I'm going to run 10 kilometers today, and if my body was like, if we got to like kilometer 8. And my body started saying like, oh no, we need to stop, like this is too much. Then what I do is I bolt on like another 10 kilometers. And if you do this for like a few weeks or a month, like your body eventually learns like, shit, I better not give this guy any shit when he asks me to do something. Because if I do, then he's going to force me to do double or triple, and he's going to mean it, and I'm going to have to do it. And so this is an awesome way to like, basically just weed the coward out of yourself. So if you say to your body, hey, today we're going to make 100 cold calls, or hey, today we're going to do, we're going to really go hard on this objection handling with the sales calls, or hey, today we're going to do this training and we need to do this and this, or we're going to make this content. If it's like, nah, I don't think so, mate, then what you do is you force it to do double or triple. It's like, we're going to make 100 cold calls a day. The body's like, no. You're like, all right, mate, well, here's 200 then. And you're going to have to work an extra 6 hours to get it done. Sorry, but that's what you get for being such a puss, such a pussy. And this is great, because if you actually mean it and you follow through on it, you condition the body and you condition the character to sort of become a little bit afraid of you. And then it's like, oh, I probably shouldn't make him feel any fear, because like he's going to make me do double. So you just condition this resistance out of you. So for example, when I started, I was terrified of saying cold emails, and I set myself a target of 20 a day, which is way too little, and my body resisted. So I made it do 40. So I'd be like, we're going to do 20 cold emails today. And, it's like, no, we're not going to do 20. So I was like, right, we'll do 40 then. And then what happened is I'd get to sending like 35 cold emails, and then I'd start feeling resistance again, and then I'd be like, okay, another 40. Like if you want to give me resistance, body, I'm going to give you more work. Like there's only one winner here. And this is how we get compliance from the body, take control and beat resistance. And this was what I said earlier about this long distance running, half marathons and stuff. If I'm going for a 10 kilometer run and my body starts kicking up a fuss, I'll push it to 15K. If my mind says a 1 minute plank and my body says no, I'll extend it to 2 minutes. Eventually the body learns who's boss, and it will know that kicking up a fuss or fighting back results in even more of what it doesn't want to do, thus building compliance. And here's a good way to remember to do this. So here's a little quote for you. When your body pulls its fists for a fight, pull a kitchen knife. If it pulls a bigger knife, pull a pistol. If it pulls a submachine gun, pull a grenade launcher. And basically the point here is, you want to, whenever you can, pull a bigger weapon. And the body's got some pretty big weapons, so it's gonna continuously do this, but wherever you can, push it. Now, there is a caveat to this, that you have biological limits. Burnout is real. I've discussed it, at a surface level, and there will be a later video in the mindset training on how to handle this and how to know when you're pushing yourself too far, because at the end of the day, the body has nukes, right? And the body has the capacity to wage nuclear warfare if you push it fast enough. And, the nuclear warfare is basically like disassociation, terrible brain fog, severe anxiety, crippling self-doubt. This thing, if you push it too far, but you can push it pretty fucking far before it tries to nuke you, right? So, when my body says, why don't we go and wash our car instead of doing our work today? It's just putting its fist up, It's just saying, nah, that's not, I'm not burned out or anything. But when you start waking up I've had this before, when you start, one little thing I'll get when I get really burned out is I'll wake up at 4, and this, I've never told anyone this before, so I'm telling you now. I'll wake up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. with horrible, I wouldn't call it sleep paralysis per se, but I'll wake up in this just complete state of confusion and frenzy where my mind's just racing, trying to solve problems, and I'm sweating, and I basically get this fever, and I feel sick, and it's horrible, and I'll get nauseous and too hot, and I'm not ill, but that's a sign that my body's pulling a nuke on me. When I start waking up at 5 a.m. and cold sweats when there's nothing wrong with my immune system, and I'm just everything feels terrible, and there's just this impending doom, then I'm right, maybe I should just take my foot off the gas, and now it's probably time to go on holiday, or take the day off. There's nothing wrong with taking a day off here and there, because sometimes it's totally necessary. You can only push your body and your limits so far, but what I'm here to tell you is it takes I get to that point after many months of consecutive 12-hour days, and real hardcore proper pain. You're not going to be burned. People do this, they'll work for 3-4 weeks. Oh, I'm burned out. Oh, I'm really stressed. I'm really tired. I'm burned out. It's no. Your capacity is far above what you think it is, right? So you want to set and stick to a routine for relaxing and having downtime. So this is why, for example, I rest a lot. There'll be times when I'll finish work, and when I finish work, I'm I'll try and switch off completely. I'll finish work in the evening, and before bed, I will just completely switch off. You need to learn to relax and have downtime, because there's only so much your body can take before it breaks and starts sending you into a burnout. So if you start sacrificing your diet and your sleep and your rest and your relaxation, then you're going to burn out. And it will do this to you if you're not careful. So you don't want to beat yourself up for having limits. You want to allow your body to rest and recover frequently. And you want to reward it for its compliance. The general knows when the soldier is too tired to fight. And one day, if the general's not careful, the soldier may shoot the general when he isn't looking, if he's pushed too far. So, if you're a general and you're responsible to give a soldier orders, you've got to know where his limits are. And you can push him pretty fucking far, right? You can test him and push him pretty far. But there will come a point where the soldier will turn around and say, absolutely not, and pull out a gun and shoot the general. And I'm pretty sure this has probably happened before. I don't know any historical cases or examples, but this has probably happened before, military mismanagement, where someone just shoots their officer because they don't want to do it, right? I can imagine that happened. Even video game characters need to rest, sleep, enjoy, and recover. So take action stacking to an extreme at your peril. But action stacking is a great way to deal with pain and resistance, and if you use it, it will skyrocket your chances of success. So this is the first method. The second method is the general's perspective. So another method we can use to deal with pain and resistance, especially pain and resistance that's severe and really bad. So this is when you're like in really bad pain and really bad resistance. You can do this, the thing called the general's perspective. And this is basically where you take a third person view or perspective of yourself. And this makes managing pain 10 times easier. And when you're feeling resistance and huge levels of emotion, it helps you pull yourself out into the third person and visualize your body in your environment. So in a video game, in third person, video games are quite easy to play, obviously, but in a video game, the best way to think about this is in a video game. Sorry, I'm tripping up on my words here. Been a while of recording, I'm sure you can forgive me. So life is a video game. The best way to visualize this is to see your life as some sort of video game when things get tough. You have the character, and then you have the joysticks. You tell the character what to do, and it does so without complaint. The character will need to rest and relax from time to time, but for the most part, that sucker does whatever the thumbs and the joysticks say. This is hugely important to develop as an entrepreneur. It allows you to step back, analyze your decisions, emotions, and actions, and get a more rational view on things. As entrepreneurs, we have no boss, no one to answer to, and no one to hold us accountable. So you need to learn to analyze your own actions and pain avoidance tendencies as no one else will. This is a skill you will develop. It helps very stressful situations. It helps to create stressful situations and then see yourself in the third person. So what I'll do often if I want to practice the general's perspective, because I use it all the time, is I'll do something like a plank, and then I'll take myself into the third person and see myself planking from like the top corner of the room. And it's weird because when you condition yourself to see yourself, you shut your eyes, and when you condition yourself to see yourself in the third person, you don't really register the pain. It's really strange. And I've got quite good at this, right? And I know that this sounds really hard to do, but it's possible. And when you're in the thick of it, and when there's loads of emotion flying around, and you're not sure what to do, and everything's really painful, and you're under loads of pressure and stress, just closing your eyes and imagining yourself in the third person, and sort of almost analyzing you in the same way that you would analyze or control a video game character is great. And I've done this before with like long distance running. If I'm doing like a proper big like 30-40k or something, and I am in a world of pain, like you can imagine like your lungs feel like they're going to burst, and your calves and your knees hurt. And like what I'll do sometimes, I'll be running and I'll take myself out into the third person, and like I'll try and see myself from the third person perspective, and I'm basically watching myself running I've obviously got my eyes open, otherwise I'd run into like a tree or something, but when you get good at this, it becomes really helpful. And then like you can just run forever, not forever, because you're still sort of feeling the pain, but because you're seeing yourself from a third perspective, it's different. So this obviously sounds a little hard to do, and it's a tool that takes a while to develop, but one worth doing. So let's give it a go. Now you can take the angle of whatever feels most natural. For me, the angle that feels most natural is over my left shoulder. So if I'm trying to see myself in third person, I'll try and see myself as if I'm coming at the angle from the top left corner of the room, right? So you can there'll be an angle that feels most natural to you. But yeah, whatever. Or you can maybe but usually over my left shoulder. Yours might be in front of your right shoulder. So maybe you prefer it from like the front, but whatever. So here are the steps to practice this. So what I want you to do is stand up right now and walk over to where you want to view yourself from. Take a mental snapshot of the space and the key details. So I'm going to do this right now. I'm just going to walk over here into the corner. Okay, and then what you're going to do is, if you imagine you're taking like a screenshot of that thing, so you want to remember it, and you can, if it helps to have a cue, you can blink heavily as if you've screenshotted it. I know it's weird, but trust me, this shit works. So you should have it in your mind as to what this space looks like, and you should be familiar with this space. Now what you want to do is shut your eyes and put your hands over your eyes so it's really dark. And then imagine sitting or standing a meter away from your body. So where you were just stood, imagine being stood there again, right? And imagine what you'd see. So, you'd see what you just saw. So visualize the micro first. So if you've got a clip in your hair, the color of your t-shirt, like the key to this visualization thing is the details. So if I close my eyes, I know that the straw in my water bottle was leaning towards the wall. And I know that the chair was sort of rotated slightly to the left. And once you pick up on a few little details, the rest of it comes to fruition. And now if I shut my eyes, I'm holding my hands together on my desk here. And I can almost basically see myself. And it's never going to be this clear 1080p HD image. But I can visualize myself doing the work. And from that, you can paint the picture of the macro so you can see yourself. And now visualize the environment in detail. So what does your posture look like? What does your desk look like? The chair you're in, what's in the background? What's it like? And so now you have a solid image of what you look like. Shrug your shoulders. So just take a physical action and just observe yourself shrugging your shoulders in the third person. And you're not going to get this right the first time. You can open your eyes now. This is this is hard to get the hang of. It takes quite a lot of practice. But if you just imagine seeing yourself and you just, you're shrugging your shoulders or you're moving your arms around, like you can start to see yourself in the third person. And this is an awesome thing to do because when the going gets tough, and I don't use this that often, but when I'm in a real state of pain, whether it's in physically or mentally or whatever, and I'm fucking exhausted and I've got like nothing left in the tank and I've just got to get this thing done, like that's when I'll start using this sort of thing. Okay. Now that we've talked about how to control the body and basically exercise effort, we're going to talk about this thing called the bank of suffering, which is a really cool idea that I came up with to sort of explain and justify why you should do the work and why you should do the hard thing. So pain, we now know, manifests when resistance meets effort. And that's where the pain comes from. So when there is resistance and we push through the resistance with effort, we experience pain. As a byproduct, we create pain. In the same way that right now, I've been recording for, 2-3 hours straight, and I'm starting to experience mental fatigue, and I've got to push on and push through it. And now once I get to this sort of 2.5 hour mark, 3 hour mark of the recording, the resistance starts to kick in. And so right now I am meeting resistance with effort, which means that right now in real time I am in a little bit of pain, and I can feel that mental pain in my head, in my mental. And pain equals resistance times effort. So P equals R times E. Now, the opposite of pain in this context is comfort. So comfort happens when you meet resistance with cope. So when you experience resistance, like, oh, I shouldn't do it, or, oh, I shouldn't, maybe I should just do it tomorrow. When you experience any sort of resistance and you don't meet it with effort, you meet it with comfort, basically, with cope, right? I need to just do this. There we go. So you meet it with cope instead of pain, right? Or sorry, you meet it with cope instead of effort. So pain is resistance plus effort, and comfort is resistance plus cope. So this is when you need to do something, you don't want to do it, and so you find a way out to not do it. So you want to think of pain as the currency you use to negotiate and trade with the universe. This is an interesting idea. Pain is a currency, and you use it to negotiate and trade with the universe in the future. The more pain you have in your past, so basically, you experience painful things in the present, the only way to experience pain is to meet resistance with effort. And the more often you do that, the more pain you're in. The more pain you're in the present means that you've been in more pain in the past, right? The more bargaining power you have. Remember, this has to be productive, healthy, becoming pain. So, like smacking your head against the wall is not going to make you successful. It might be painful, but it's not going to make you successful. We're talking about mental, productive pain here. But when you do this, you have more bargaining power to buy what you want. And this basically means the more you can demand from the universe. So when you ask the universe for something, when you say, I want this goal or I want this reality, what it's going to do is it's going to basically set some parameters and some conditions to say, right, well, if you want this, you've got to go through this much pain. And that's an arbitrary amount, right? And no one knows exactly how many units of pain you need. But the thing that you use to, in essence, purchase success is pain. And so here's a visual. Here's you, and here's work or something hard. So every single day, you are faced with something hard. And we know this as the work. Whether that's in the gym, in the office, in your relationships, or anywhere in your life, you have the work, right? Pushing the boulder up the hill. And every time you're facing the work, then you have to make a decision. So, really it's binary. There's when you've got something hard to do, there's two ways that you can handle it. You can either face the easy way or you can face the hard way. And so this is basically the two equations. So the comfortable way, the easy way out, is to experience comfort. And that's when you meet resistance with cope. Sorry, this shouldn't be D, this should say C. So if you remember, the equation is comfort equals resistance plus cope, right? So this is a mistake, but I'm sure you can forgive me. So we can go down the comfortable route or we can go down the hard route. So if we're faced with pushing the boulder up the hill, then either we can step aside and let the boulder roll down the hill, which would be the comfortable way, or we can continue to push forward and lock in, and that would be the painful way. And so the comfortable way is like just taking a pain-killing pill and just, experiencing some short-term pleasure and some comfort. And the painful way is basically experiencing pain and putting yourself in some suffering. And so this could be the case where, it doesn't have to be the work, but maybe you're faced with the option to eat some ice cream. And you're on a diet and you're trying to lose weight. So your goal is to lose weight, which means you need to become the person that can lose the weight. And part of that is resisting the impulse to eat sugar. And so, here's you. And, the something hard is there's a bowl of ice cream that you could eat, but you shouldn't. Now, you can either do the comfortable thing and eat the ice cream and, feel pretty good right now, but pretty bad later. Or you can do the hard thing, which is resist the impulse, experience the pain of resisting the impulse, and put yourself in some suffering. You can either take the easy route, where you create comfort, where you meet resistance with denial or cope, or you can take the hard route, which is where you experience pain and you meet resistance with effort. And this is basically everywhere in life. Like any time that you experience an impulse or need to do something tough, like you can either do the easy thing or the hard thing. And the hard thing is what you should do, obviously. But here's where it gets interesting. So what I want you to imagine is that you have there's an internal bank, right, that every human being on the planet is a member of. Every single human on the planet has a bank account with this bank, and this bank is called the bank of suffering. Okay? So there's this arbitrary, abstract bank called the bank of suffering that every single person on the planet has an account with. And inside of this bank, you have an account balance that keeps track of your past pain levels. And remember, this is your becoming pain levels. So not physical pain levels, because there's plenty of people that have been in lots of physical pain that aren't successful, right? I'm talking intentional pain. So if you're faced with something hard and you take the comfortable, easy route, then I want you to imagine that -2 pain dollars are deducted from your account balance. So if you went into your bank right now and you took out $2, then you'd be withdrawing $2 and you'd be taking $2 out of your bank. But if you're faced with something hard and you take the hard, painful route, so you resist the impulse to eat the ice cream, you get in the cold shower, you do the cold call, you handle the sales objections. If you do the hard thing, you run the extra 5 kilometers, then what happens is you add a pain dollar to your account balance. And every single working day and every single working hour, except when you're on holiday, days off, when you're relaxing and stuff, you're faced with this decision and you must decide. So this is pretty interesting. By the way, there's no excuse on holidays either. You can't just go on a 3-month bender and expect it to not count. But this is interesting. So you have your account balance. Every time you do something painful, you add $1. Every time you do something easy, you take out $2. Right? So if you resist the impulse to eat ice cream 10 times, then your account balance would be $10. You've got 10 pain dollars. But then if one day you had a week where you didn't resist the impulse to eat the ice cream 10 times, then you'd have minus $20. Because the thing is when you take the comfortable, easy route, you lose more than you would have gained if you took the hard route. And basically what happens in life with the bank of suffering is everyone has an account balance. You can't see it and it's arbitrary, but it exists. Everyone has an account balance with the bank of suffering. And so, if every time you have an impulse or you need to do something that is painful, if you don't do it, if you don't do the hard thing, or if you give in to the impulse, then you're affecting your balance. And some people, they have really high balances. Some people have low balances. Some people are in debt to the bank, which means they owe the bank pain and they haven't had enough pain. And this is why consistency is key, because pain avoidance costs you 2 times, sometimes 3 to 10 times more than you'd earn by facing the pain. And the true cost of inconsistency and comfort is imaginable. So you have this account balance, and every time you make a decision between doing the painful thing or the easy thing, you lose or you gain a pain dollar or 2 pain dollars. Now, if you're doing something really painful, then you'll gain more than $1. So like, let's say for example, there's something you really, really do not want to do and it's the worst thing you've ever done, but it contributes to your goal. Like, I don't know, doing your first sales call or something, then maybe you'll add 10 pain dollars. So the more painful the action, the more dollars you get paid for doing it in pain currency. And likewise, the flip side of that is the more painful it is, the more comfort you're going to generate as a result of not doing it. And therefore, like the amount of money that will be withdrawn from your bank account is deducted in proportion to the level of comfort. So let's say that you had to do your first sales call and you wimped out, then maybe like if you did the sales call, maybe you'd add 50 pain dollars to your bank balance, to your bank of suffering account balance, if you did the call. But if you pussy out of the call, then you lose 100 pain dollars, because the comfort thing costs you almost always twice as much as the pain thing would add you, would earn you, if that makes sense. A lot of people are in pain debt. This is where their bank of suffering account balance is in the minus and they owe the bank money. And this when you're in debt to the bank of suffering, which you probably are right now, this is when you have a really fucking miserable life. We see this in people's lives when they get very depressed, dead broke, really overweight, or just a really bad, miserable existence. Like when someone's just, we all know someone who's just got a really shitty life. Like this is because their bank of suffering is like severely overdrawn. Like they're just in massive debt to the bank, which means that they've been taking the comfortable, easy route for way, way too long. And by the way, remember, the bank of suffering only keeps track of the productive becoming mental pain. So like if you fall out of a tree and break your leg, you don't add any pain dollars to the bank account. That doesn't count, right? If a family member of yours passes away, you don't add any dollars for that. Like, I'm talking about like the pain that comes as a result of you doing the work and facing the resistance. Okay, exclusively that sort of pain. So people who have been taking the comfort pill and the easy route over and over again basically become overdrawn. Because remember, doing the comfortable thing costs you twice as much as doing the painful thing would earn you. And they don't really deserve to be happy. And this is a horrible thing to say, but some people don't deserve good lives. Some people are just like, they don't deserve it because they don't have the character to do the work or just suffer. And that's kind of the contract you sign with God or the universe when you're born is, yep, I'll suffer. And if I suffer, I'll have a good life. The cool thing is that after a while, you start gaining interest on your pain dollars and they start compounding. It scales up and you start seeing the great effects after years of consistency. And this is why consistency is so important because, the whole key here is that, like I said before, the comfortable thing costs you twice as much as the pain thing would earn you. So if you're consistent, let's say you are consistent with your business and your work and everything for 6 months. And for 6 months, you build and build and build and build. Well, if you followed that 6 months of consistency with 3 months of inconsistency, then you'd basically be back to the start. And that's really how it works. Like this, the comfort thing costs you way more than the pain thing earns you, which is why people become so overdrawn because they do the painful thing so little and they do the comfortable thing so often that they basically just end up in debt and then they owe the bank a lot of money, right? Anyone that is the best in the world at something, like athletes, have just shown up and faced the pain every single day. And their account balances for the bank of suffering are so high that they get to cash in their pain dollars for victory, first place, sponsorship deals, status, achievement, and more. So when you see people that win and have lots of awesome stuff and they have all these amazing byproducts of victory, if you just looked at their bank of suffering account balance, you would find that their pain account balance is so high. Like if someone like Michael Jordan, who's like or someone like Michael Phelps or Tiger Woods or Alex Honnold, like someone who's just the best in the world at what they do from a sports perspective, like, you know, that person has just put in so much pain, and that their bank balance, their bank of suffering balance is just insanely high, and they are just reveling in that, right? And that's really how it goes. And, you know, they get to trade those dollars in. They get to buy things with the pain dollars. The more painful something is, the more dollars you get for it. It's not going to be a binary $1 deposit every time. So say, for example, you just had a really horrible, gnarly sales call and you managed to push through and close it. Or let's say you have a really important, I had this before. I had the flu. I signed a client, and a day later I got, I think it was swine flu. And I went blue. I was really unwell, right? I had the flu. Maybe it wasn't, I don't think it was COVID, because that was way after that point. But I had the flu, swine flu or some fucking horrible thing. And I just signed this client, and I told them that I could deliver them this project, this marketing project, and get their ads up and running within a week. And I could hardly get out of bed. I was throwing up, it was fever, and I had to sit there on my laptop, and even just pressing keys on my laptop was just agony, you know, because when you've got the flu, like, even just sitting up is hard work, right? And you're spinning. And so, you know, I had this really important client project to complete whilst I had the flu, and I got it done, and I shipped the project, and it worked. And then I went to sleep, you know, after, like, I think it took me like the whole week just to do this one thing. But that's an example where that could add like 1,000 pain dollars to my bank balance. Like, when it's really fucking pain, like when that shit is just, when your entire fiber of being just aches and doesn't want to do it, that's when you can add these huge deposits, right? It's an opportunity to make a ton of pain dollars. And these things could add hundreds of dollars to your you know, bank of suffering bank balance. And likewise, if you avoid doing them when it matters, then you'll have to double what you would have earned and deduct it. So if I didn't submit this project for this client during this time frame, what I would have had to do is dip into my bank of suffering bank balance and withdraw like double what I would have earned. So let's say that I would have earned $1,000 in pain dollars for doing this project whilst I had the flu. If I didn't do it, I'd have to go into my bank of suffering balance and withdraw $2,000 and just give it and just basically burn it. So when you make a withdrawal because you've done something comfortable, you withdraw the cash and just set fire to it, and you're never going to see it again. And then you've got to fucking rebuild it. And this is why people plateau in life, and why people aren't successful. It's because they might make a little bit of progress, but then they end up way back at the beginning, because like they make a bit of progress and then they withdraw all this money and then they burn it, and then their bank of suffering balance is just fucked. This little mental model really gamifies pain. While it's an abstraction and not really real, it'll help you visualize the importance of doing the work. All you're trying to do all day, every day, is earn pain dollars, as many as you can. And once you've earned them, you want to hold on to them and not lose them. And you can lose them real quick. This is why, you know, if you try business for 3 months and put some real graft and work in for a while, and then take a 6-month break, then you're worse off than when you started. And the cool thing about this is, after a while, after a few years of doing this, or a couple of decades, depending on what you want to buy, you get to go shopping and cash in your pain dollars. This is a beautiful idea. So all these things you want, like this little thing here represents financial freedom, which could cost 4 million pain dollars. So obviously this is arbitrary, right? I'm just pulling these numbers out my arse. But, you know, there comes a point in the future, a year or two from now, if you really compress the amount of pain you're in for the next 12 months, 24 months, 18 months, whatever, 6 months, and you really put yourself through the ringer, and you eat as much pain as you can, and you stack up like a bank balance of like 4 million pain dollars after just doing the worst shit imaginable, then you get to buy financial freedom. Now, obviously, we're not actually physically taking out cash and buying freedom, but this is what I mean by it's a negotiation. You're bargaining with the universe, and the only bargaining power you have, the only leverage you have in this negotiation to make this deal is pain. And if we think about it as dollars, and we think about it as a bank account, then, you know, if you were going to buy a house, then you would send money from your bank account to the owner of the house, and you'd buy the house, and you buy the house, right? But if you want to, you know, if you want to have these nice things in life, then the only thing that you can use to quote unquote buy them, yes, you will use money to buy these things. So money buys you freedom, money buys you a house, money buys you a jet, etc., etc. But the way you make that money is through pain. So it's kind of like you could say it's like a currency exchange where you exchange pain dollars for real dollars and then you go out and buy. We're not going to get too abstract, but you get the point. You cash these things in the future, and the more you have, the more bargaining power you have. So you can buy freedom with pain dollars. You can buy mansions with pain dollars. You can buy an incredible physique. So, if you've been going to the gym, every day for years on end and resisting the impulses to eat bad foods, and, you've been training really hard and you've been disciplined with your sleep, and you do that for years on end, then what happens is in the future, you get to cash that in and you get to go. And by the way, when you cash in, the cool thing about this is when you cash in your pain dollars, the pain dollars are not deducted from your bank account. They very much stay there, so you can use them over and over again to buy more things and stack up more things. And so if you're shredded or ripped, it's because you've been through the pain, enough pain to deserve it. A private jet could cost 400 million pain dollars. I'm pulling numbers out my ass, right? This is arbitrary. So, like the example of the flu thing, maybe it could add 1,000 pain dollars or 5 pain dollars. I don't know, but if you bear with the abstraction, you get the point. Or maybe buying a supercar, maybe you'd buy that with 3 million pain dollars. Or retiring your parents, or buying a Rolex, or winning and becoming the best in your industry. All of these things these are negotiations. They're all purchasable with enough pain. And you want to build your pain bank balance as big as you can with as much money as you can, so that in the future you get to go to the universe and say, hello, mate. And the universe will be like, how we doing, mate? And then you'll say, hey, can I get a lifetime of financial freedom, please? And the universe will turn around and say, yep, all that's going to cost you is X amount of pain. And that's literally, that's the conversation that you have with the universe in the future. If you want the thing that you want, you have to suffer to get it. And it's as simple as that. And what I've done throughout this video is explain how to suffer, where the suffering comes from, and how to do the work, and it's going to make you very rich. And if there's one video that you want to cling on to, how like in World War II, there was this thing called the Soldier's Bible. And I think it was also probably in World War I as well, but I just know the story from one war story that I read a while ago. There's this thing called the Soldier's Pocket Bible, where like there's this mini Bible that soldiers in the trenches would carry with them, and on their when they're on the fronts and stuff, and when they're fighting, like they'd have this little Bible with them the whole time. And what it would do is it would act as a sort of source of comfort for them, something they could cling on to and hold on to, and just have faith that the war was going to be over and that they were going to be okay. Now, I'm not in any way, shape or form comparing my work to the work of the Bible or the Quran or any of these holy books, because, they're God's literature, and nothing I could produce could ever come close to any holy book like that, whether it's the Torah or the Bible or the Quran. But if there's one thing that you want to cling on to, if there's one video that you should come back to watch time and time and time again when you're struggling, when you're suffering, when you're lost, it is Trial by Fire. I'd have this thing bookmarked on speed dial. So any time that you're like, oh, I don't want to do it, or any time that you feel lost and just forget everything that I've taught you, and when the emotions overwhelm you and the fear and the suffering and the doubt just comes back in, watch this thing for the 3 or so hours that I've just made it for, and you'll be reset straight back to the beginning. And imagine that if every time you face the pain, you were rewarded with $10 in cash. You'd face it all the time. Like, imagine if the feedback was that direct. Like, make a cold call. Oh, there's $10. Oh, that's nice. Make a cold call. There's $10. That's kind of how it works. This is the thing. You are. And the rewards exceed way beyond $10. It's just that the feedback isn't that instant. So every time, imagine if every time you resisted the impulse to eat some junk food, you just noticed yourself get a little bit skinnier or a little bit more shredded. You do it all the time. But this is the thing, is that is actually what happens. You just don't notice it because it's so gradual, right? So to get what you want, you must deserve what you want. The world is not yet a crazy enough place to reward a whole bunch of undeserving people. And that's a quote from Charlie Munger. He died last year, sadly. He's a billionaire now. Well, he was a billionaire when he died. He's Warren Buffett's business partner, so very successful, very rich. But that quote is just brilliant. To get what you want, you must deserve what you want. The world is not yet a crazy enough place to reward a whole bunch of undeserving people. And how do you deserve something? Well, pain. Do the work. So that's it. That's trial by fire. We went through how the universe will always push back, no matter what. When you set a goal, you cast a shadow. We talked about the wall of flames and the nature of resistance and where resistance comes from. We brought in the mythological metaphor of slaying the dragon and how to do the work and how to become aware of pain and what it actually is and how we control the body and how we really can just start to see this as like a bank balance, and you get to cash it in. And it's such a beautiful idea. Like this trial by fire thing is honestly like I would honestly say this could arguably be like the most important video in the entire training of the entire program. Because when I found this stuff out, like I know I say this about a lot of the different trainings and stuff, and it's all very important, but this idea, like you can't really argue with it, and it makes a lot of sense. And it is some of my best work to date. So I hope you enjoyed it. Do the work. I'm going to say it 5 times. Do the work, do the work, do the work, do the work, do the work.